Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 6:30, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Note for the public record that all members of City Council are present and accounted for, and we'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please stand and join us. And before we get started, I'll go ahead and note for those of you who may be here for a couple of items. Things have changed or been pulled off. First item under public hearing agenda this evening, PH-20-10, North Point Mall redevelopment change to conditions of zoning. That item has been deferred by the applicant to Monday, September 28th, and will be neither heard nor considered during this meeting. And also, the new business item D on the agendas that were printed at the back of the room. It's my town app, Alpharetta mobile app. That has been pulled from the agenda this evening. So those items will not be heard or discussed this evening. We'll go ahead and begin with presentation this evening, and it is a unique presentation for the Gift of Life proclamation. Ms. Randall, if you'd like to join me down front. Chris, would you like to tell us a little bit about this? If you say so. See, they just tell me I'm the mayor. Chris runs things.
You're bad at this.
Okay, well, thank you. So we have a really unique situation here in the city of Alpharetta. We've got a great workforce and we've got a great community. And so we time to time take a moment before our meetings to recognize some of the good things that are going on around here. And tonight, we're going to do that. We have a proclamation by the mayor and the council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, for the gift of life. Whereas the Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital is a nationally recognized kidney transplant program and is given the gift of life through organ donation. And whereas the Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital performed the first kidney transplant in 1966 and has performed more than 5,000 kidney transplants through 2018. They have performed more than 1,300 living donor kidney transplants to date. And whereas the Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital offers a well-established living donor kidney transplant program, their paired donor exchange program is ranked as the 5th largest paired donor program in the country through the National Kidney Registry. And whereas the Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital ranks number 6 in the nation for adult kidney transplant volume, and whereas the Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital encourages living donor transplants because a kidney from a living donor provides the greatest chance for long-term success. Patients who receive a kidney from a living donor do not need to wait for a kidney from a deceased organ donor and can undergo transplantation earlier, with improves the survival of the transplanted kidney, and kidneys from living donors have an excellent chance of immediately regaining function after transplantation. And whereas the Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital is set to perform a living kidney donor operation on September 3rd, 2020, in which City of Alpharetta employee Don Crowley project administrator in community development, is graciously donating a kidney to a coworker and code enforcement officer in community development, Frank Jackson. Garrett Washington, a City of Alpharetta police officer, also graciously donated a kidney to his father in November 2018. And now, therefore, we, the mayor and city council of the City of Alpharetta, do hereby thank Emory Transplant Center at Emory University Hospital, Don Crowley, Frank Jackson, and Garrett Washington for their life-saving efforts supporting those in need and service to the community. We wish them much success in their continuing life-saving efforts. Proclaim this 24th day of August, 2020.
Thank you, Mayor. It's such an honor to receive this proclamation on behalf of our workforce. These are true, inspiring stories of selfless heroes. They're giving the best gift we can ever ask, the gift of life. And that's yet another example that we have the best city and the best works here.
Thank you. Bob?
Thanks, Mayor. Just know that Don Crowley was hired just a little time before I was hired here. And one of the first people I met in City Hall, the old hall, was Dawn. And she made just an impression on me and everybody else who walked into the front door of the hall with her smile, her joy, just her attitude. And it's like that day after day, day in and day out. I don't think Dawn ever has a bad day. So just thank God that she has the spirit to step forward and to even see if her kidney is donable, and it is. And so we're just in awe of all of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It's a tribute to the organization you've built over the last 20 years that we have employees wanting to do that. And thank you all for being here. And please say a prayer if you're so inclined for those involved in the surgery in a couple of weeks. So the first item up on the consent agenda, or first item up for a vote this evening, will be the consent agenda. And the item on that is council meeting minutes from our meeting of August 10th, 2020. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second by Councilman Burnett. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And maybe one more time. And it does pass unanimously. So we will move on to the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, the first item on the printed agenda has been deferred until September 28th. So the next item up is item B, and that is V-20-09, Hamilton Hotel Exterior Material Variance. Mr. Woodman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you is a variance to allow ephes or synthetic stucco as an exterior finish material on the rear elevation of the Hamilton Hotel and within the interior walls of the amenity area. The downtown overlay allows the use of hard coat stucco, but it does not allow synthetic stucco on walls visible from the street. I have the location map on the overhead, The property is located at 21 Milton Avenue at the northwest corner of Milton Avenue and Old Canton Street. Property is roughly an acre and it's zoned downtown core. Is currently being developed with a 119-room boutique hotel, the Hamilton Hotel. Surrounding properties are zoned C2, except for the property to the east, which is the Milton Park, which is designated open space and recreation. Adjacent properties, again, Old Milton Park and Mercantile Social are to the east. The Waters Building, Truck and Tap, and Ceviche are to the south. The future Aria Salon Building and the undeveloped commercial property is located to the west, and Oxygen Financial and Rivers Academy to the north. The downtown overlay requires that exterior finished materials on walls visible from a street or civic space be limited to brick, manufactured stone, architectural block, natural stone, wood siding, cement-based siding, cement-based panels, and hard coat stucco. The applicant, according to the applicant, the detailed work that was approved on the building's exterior, approved by the Design Review Board, those details would not be feasible with the use of the hard coat stucco. The applicant did provide a letter from a subcontractor that installs EIFS and stucco systems, and that letter does state that using the hard coat stucco has the potential for system failures due to the desired thickness of the stucco. There's also a lack of drainage efficiency with the hard coat stucco, and the thermal resistance with the stucco is compromised. The stucco system would change, also the hard coat stucco would change the look of the building since it would require more control and reveal joints in the walls. This item was shown at the August 12th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were no public comments, and staff has reviewed the proposal and finds that the variance does not conflict with the established review criteria. The applicant's stucco system contractor states that the use of EIFS would maintain the desired look of the building and reduce the potential for system failures. And just to orient you to where they're looking to use the synthetic stucco or EIFS, this is the hotel site plan. This would be Milton Avenue and Old Canton Street. And you can see the building kind of wraps around the corner of the two streets. And then on the back side of the building, there is an amenity area back here. So the stucco is proposed on this end of the building here, as well as on the back side of the building within this amenity area. And I'll show you what that looks like on the elevations. So this is the back of the building. This is, put these both here. So this area right here is this piece. And then this is the back side of the building within the interior of the amenity area. So this area really, the stucco that's proposed on this side of the building would not be visible from Old Canton Street, so it's really technically not this piece, but anything that would be visible from Old Canton Street here, as well as this piece of the building. Staff is recommending approval of V2009 Hamilton Hotel exterior material variance subject to the following condition. There's one condition proposed, and that is one, EIFS or synthetic stucco shall be permitted as an exterior finish material on the Hamilton Hotel building and limited to the areas depicted on the submitted elevations at the rear of the building. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Thanks, Michael. John Boniface, Mayfair Street Partners, 26 Milton Avenue, here on behalf of MF Cotton House Development. We agree with city staff's recommendation of approval. Michael did a great job explaining kind of conceptually what the purpose of the variance request is. And just to elaborate a bit, the level of detail work that maintains the look from the front of the building and carries it to the interior of the amenity space. It's important and critical to us to maintain that look and feel inside that amenity space, as we know it is also to the community, to obviously our hotel guests. So to make sure that we can maintain, to maintain that feel, we need to have that level of detail. And if you saw the details that we submitted, the composition of the stucco system, you have a much thicker cementitious coat that's attached with a metal lath. And to do really anything other than a flat surface, you introduce opportunities for cracking, water intrusion. So just for a long-term product that people years down the road are going to look at and be proud of, we feel that if we were to go with a hard coat stucco, that's not what we would get. So it's a comprehensive warrantable system, the synthetic stucco system. So a hard coat stucco system, you have various trades coming together, and it is not a comprehensive system. So that coupled with the brick, if you look, am I allowed to borrow some of this? If you can see here, we've introduced, with the work and the help of city staff, brick that accentuates each side of the column. And so it adds a level of dimension and depth to the facade that we believe is integral to the architectural integrity of the design. And for those reasons, we're here presenting that request.
Do we have any questions from council at this time? Thanks, sir.
All right, thank y'all.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve V-20-09 Hamilton Hotel exterior material variance, subject to the condition as read by Mr. Woodman.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Richard, and a second by Councilman Binder. Any discussion?
Oh.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. I totally agree with what John had to say about this. I normally would not entertain a compromise to our design standards, but in this case, I really think you have a valid argument, and I think you will continue the design element throughout the building. So it's looking good out there. Keep up the good work.
Councilman Binder.
I'm just excited to see that Councilmember Mitchell, Pro Tem Mitchell, didn't go for four-sided brick on this one. So I'll be happy to support this as well. But also want to say thank you for what you're doing in the community. I know it's not easy right now. I like when I go by Milton Avenue, I keep hoping to see those construction trucks going on. So you guys are doing great, and thank you for what you're doing.
Unless there's any other comments, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All of those in favor of approving V-20-09 Hamilton Hotel exterior material variance as proposed by Councilwoman Richard, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Next item up on tonight's agenda is item C, and that is CU-20-03/V-20-10 Spirit of God Church, and that's 1200 Upper Hembry Road. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor again.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is a conditional use and variance to allow a one-story, 22,000 square foot church on 2.9 acres. Spirit of God Christian Church proposes to construct a new 250-seat church. In order to save trees, staff advertised a variance to allow off-site parking within 700 feet of the property. The location map on the overhead here, this is the subject property is located at 1200 Upper Hembry Road. This would be the northeast corner of Upper Hembry and Harris Road. This is right across the street from the former Whole Foods Harry's Market. Property is zoned O&I, office institutional, and it's developed with a single-family detached home. Surrounding properties are zoned R10 to the north, which is the Creekside at Hembry subdivision, R15 to the west, which are two residential lots. PSC Planned Shopping Center District to the south, the former Harry's Market, and Office Professional, OP, to the east. So, professional and office building. Spirit of God formerly operated in the city at 1675 Hembry Road before moving their location temporarily to Roswell. The church provides one service on Sundays at 10 a.m. and a Bible study on Thursdays at 7 p.m. The applicant's initial site plan met the required parking. However, there are a bunch of trees on this property. Let me just take you to some street views. So this is at the corner, this is at the former Harry's looking across Upper Hembry at Harris. This is a little bit further to the east. Harris is over here on the left side of the page. And then this is on Harris looking south. So looking towards the light at Upper Hembry, so you can see the trees and they formed a canopy over Harris Road. And this is just looking at the property from Harris Road. Just gives you an idea of all the trees that are on the property. So due to the tree coverage on this property, the staff did ask the applicant to look at their site plan, because they did meet that required parking on site. However, we wanted to see if they could save some more quality trees on this property, and they did, and they came back with a revised site plan. That revised site plan resulted in the removal of 15 required parking spaces. So staff did go ahead and advertise the variance because the applicant was able to get an off-site parking agreement with a property, which the code allows within 500 feet. However, that property is 700 feet away, so we did advertise that variance. Go back to the location map real quick. So this is the property here. The location where they were able to secure the off-site parking agreement is at this building right here. Actually, I apologize. It's this building right here, closer to the legend. That is 700 feet from the property. That property is the Atlanta Center for Dermatological Diseases. They have 55 additional parking spaces. It's 1265 Upper Hembry Road, and that business does not operate on Sundays. As I mentioned, of course, the UDC does allow off-site parking within 500 feet outside of the downtown. At this location, that off-site parking is about 700 feet away. And the applicant does propose a shuttle or valet service to accommodate that off-site parking area. The other thing I wanted to show you was we did look at other religious facilities that are located in residential areas. This is, while Upper Hembry has been converting from more of a residential area to a commercial area, it does back up to existing residential. So we wanted to look at other religious facilities in the city that are located in residential, and when comparing the size of the property, the proposed number of parking spaces, and the size or capacity of the church, we found that the applicant's proposal is consistent with the other locations in the city in residential areas. This is the applicant's site plan. Up in the upper right-hand corner is the best look at. They do propose, as I mentioned earlier, it is a one-story building. It is over a basement, so there's a lot of topography on this property, so it will be one story from the street. On the backside, it will look 2 stories. There are 110 parking spaces, 35 parking spaces access from Upper Hembry in the front, and then 75 parking spaces access from Harris Road at the rear of the property. Total of 125 parking spaces are required for a 250-seat church, basically 1 parking space for every 2 seats. The applicant's site plan does depict the required landscape strips along Upper Hembry Road and Harris Road, and if approved, the applicant would need to install the required sidewalks along both those street frontages. And then, of course, the required 50-foot undisturbed buffer is provided on the applicant's site plan because this does abut a residential subdivision to the north. As I showed you on the street view photos, there are quite a few trees on this property. There's a canopy that consists of a mix of pines, oaks, hickory, sweet gums, and poplars. There are tree saves, so these clouded areas around the property are tree save areas, so there are a significant amount of tree save on the property. Although I will say on the east side of the property, there will be some disturbance of this proposed tree save area. This is where the slope and the lowest point of the property sits over on the east side. There's also a sanitary sewer connection through here. The good thing in this particular instance is that most of the tulip poplars are on this side, and poplars have more of a soft wood, and they drop branches quite a bit and can be hazardous. So those are a less desirable tree to be saved. Staff estimated that the 250-seat church would generate 81 trips during the Sunday peak hour. This item was shown at the July 8th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were a few questions and comments regarding the undisturbed buffer, tree removal, and church operations. However, there were no objections. I did receive one email from a neighbor not living in the subdivision immediately behind, but the subdivision on the other side of Harris, with some objections to the church at this location. Some of the objections, most of the objections were centered around traffic and access from Harris Road. Staff has reviewed this proposal and finds that the conditional use and variance do not conflict with the established review criteria. The church would have little impact during the peak hours for traffic, and the proposed size of the church in relation to the size of the property and parking are consistent with religious facilities in the city situated in residential areas. The variance to allow the off-site parking within 700 feet of the property is related to protecting the existing tree canopy. This item was considered at the August 6th Planning Commission meeting. Staff recommended approval subject to 16 conditions. There were no public comments. After discussion, Planning Commission did recommend approval subject to the staff recommended conditions, and they did add a sentence to condition number 11 addressing a connection of the 2 parking lots. So right now on the site plan, this parking lot along Upper Hembry is not connected to the parking lot at the rear. And the reason staff did not want the parking lots to connect along this side of the building because of that tree coverage and that canopy that's been created over Harris Road. However, Planning Commission had concerns that people would pull in to the front parking lot and not find parking and then have to pull out and come around the building anyways. So they did add a sentence allowing for the applicant to work with staff to make that connection. Planning Commission recommended approval subject to the following conditions. 1, a church synagogue shall be permitted use at 1200 Upper Hembry Road and limited to Spirit of God Christian Church. The sanctuary or assembly area limited to no more than 250 seats. And then restrictions on the services limiting to the Sunday worship service, the weekday Bible study, administrative office, and occasional church-related services. Condition 2 is the site-specific condition tying it to the applicant's site plan. 3 requires the developer to install the 6-foot planting strips, street trees, 6-foot sidewalk along both Upper Hembry Road and Harris Road, and requiring pedestrian lighting. Condition number 4 restricts the building to no more than 1 story with mezzanine over a basement and no more than 22,211 square feet. 5 requires that the building be primarily brick or stone on 3 sides with a gable roof and compatible with the residential character of the area that is consistent with other approvals along Upper Hembry Road. Condition 6 requires that the building be connected to the public sidewalk. 7 requires additional decorative landscaping at the corner of Harris Road and Upper Hembry Road. 8 reminds the applicant that the landscape strips are to be exclusive of overhead utilities and easements. There are some overhead utilities along Upper Hembry. 9 requires that the dumpster enclosure have the same materials to match the church. 10 requires retaining walls visible from the street to be decorative. And condition number 11 deals with the on-site parking areas. So the beginning of the condition restricts to the site plan that is on the overhead. And then Planning Commission added a sentence at the end of condition 11 that states, applicant will work with staff to consider location and configuration of a connection between the 2 parking lots if feasible. Condition number 12 requires the off-site parking agreement and shuttle or valet service prior to the CO on the property. 13 limits no outside speakers. 14 requires a police officer to be utilized for services to manage and direct traffic. 15 limits the tree save areas to the tree save areas depicted on the site plan and allows for some encroachment along the eastern tree save area due to the need for stormwater and the sanitary sewer connection. And then condition number 16 deals directly with how stormwater will be managed on this property. Our stormwater engineer reviewed this and just wanted to make sure that the applicant made every effort to connect into the existing system in the neighborhood to the north and makes provisions if they're unsuccessful in connecting in at that location. And the real reason for the detail in condition number 16, with an initial site plan that was submitted by the applicant, they showed a stormwater facility back in the buffer, the undisturbed buffer, and we've let them know that that cannot be located within the buffer. It was also a system that was not ideal for dispersing the runoff. And with that, that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilman Merkel.
Thank you, Michael. We had a similar situation, it was a little different, maybe the other end of the spectrum with a nightclub that was looking to use off-property parking. And in the downtown area, if you were to lose that off-site parking, you could in theory buy or pay in lieu of to get yourself caught back up. We're outside of the downtown district. If that medical facility is sold and their ability to use that parking lot is eliminated, we're short 1/3 of their parking. So I guess my question is, are you just going to tell them, look, no more services until you find it? And you're certainly not going to find it within 700 feet.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some other properties in proximity to this property that the church could explore should that off-site parking agreement go away. Their requirement, they're 15 parking spaces short of the required 125. And again, staff really forced the need for the parking variance over 700 feet in this particular case in exchange for saving those trees.
I get the distance part. I'm fine with that. Am I looking at this wrong? It says 110 spaces on-site and 55 spaces off-site.
So they're required a total of 125 spaces. They have 110 spaces on the site, so they're short by 15. They got the parking agreement at the medical office building for the 15 spaces that they needed, but they had access to a total of 55 spaces there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then my next question is Harris Street. Is on-street parking permitted on Harris Street?
On Harris, the street
Yeah.
on their western boundary, there would not, I don't know that there is any available right-of-way to put on-street parking there.
Just saying, does the city prohibit, is it posted no parking?
I don't believe that it is, I don't know if it's posted.
People get creative when they have to
Yeah.
walk 700 feet.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Michael, today it's conditioned for one, or in the conditions, it's one service, is that correct?
Correct. One service.
So would the parking requirements change theoretically if they had 10 services a day, or is that a fixed number?
The parking requirement is based on their total capacity. So it wouldn't change if they have a 250-seat church, but they only have 30 people per service. The parking requirement is still 125 parking spaces.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Hypes.
Mr. Woodman, how did you arrive at the 700 feet?
I used our Alpha GIS to measure the distance.
When I was studying up on this, I went on Google Maps and did the walking distance from the driveway to the closest driveway, and it's almost 3/10 of a mile. It's over 1,100 feet which is a big difference in 700 feet when you're looking at 500 feet. So I'm kind of curious as to how far it actually is, maybe in part to Councilman Merkel's point of view about at what point do people get creative with their parking, but what can be done to merge these parking lots? I've got a follow-up question to that, but if we merge the parking lots, can they pick up some parking spaces in the process?
There's potential that they could. I will say that there would be more impacts to the trees. I mean, yeah, the answer is yes. They could meet the full parking because that's what they showed on their original site plan, is that the additional 15 parking spaces were picked up through here where they connected.
I mean, I'd be curious to know where we as a city maybe give a little bit on tree preservation to keep golf carts off Upper Hembry Road, making a right into the front parking lot, and then making a left out of the front parking lot as the shuttle to go what I've measured to be at least 1,100 feet down Upper Hembry Road. And it may not be an everyday occurrence. I'm sure the pastor hopes that that's the case on every Sunday, but we can anticipate at Easter and Christmas time with full houses that there'll be shuttles running up and down Upper Hembry. So a combination of people walking, I'm going to say it's 1,100 feet. I know what you got in your report, but what I've seen. And the shuttle and the lefts in and out, I didn't know if there's some room to find some common ground to get as much parking on there to satisfy the city's requirements for that piece of property. And there may not be any interest by my fellow council members of looking at that. I mean, right now we've got maximum tree save, so we're going to down the street parking, if I understand the big picture.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I think let's see here. Condition number 11, if council so chooses to have the required parking on the property, I think we would just change condition 11, requiring all required parking on the site, and they have shown that they're able to do it.
And there would be a potential for saying the code would require 125 spots. A variance would be you can have 120 spots, but we wouldn't save all the trees that we're trying. There's a wash in there somewhere. Is that not correct?
Sure.
And some of those parking spots may be found if we merge these parking lots together to keep these cul-de-sac parking lots with left turns from being in existence.
Sure.
I'm not sure what that would look like, but I'm curious to see how it could be pursued.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, based on the initial, I think I heard you say when they submitted their initial site plan, they were able to provide all of this 125 spots, right?
Correct.
Can you give us some insight on, given that their maximum tree save, it looks like they're 15 short, what does that look like in regards to the trees that would be impacted? Can you?
All the parking spaces the 15 parking spaces were deleted from the western side of the building, so along Harris Road. So this area right here, this was connected with full parking on both sides. And that's where they achieved the full amount of parking.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, sir. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Good evening. I'm Pastor Randall Knight, pastor of Spirit of God Christian Church. Mr. Woodman, I've worked very closely with him on this and staff with this. I actually agree with you on having all the parking on site. But again, we were trying to save trees, trying to make sure we accommodated the requirements. The connection, I think actually what is a win-win for everybody is to connect the two parking lots and allow for the parking that could be accommodated there. Then it's all on site. It also provides less traffic on Upper Hembry or Harris Road. And I do believe we can do that without even bothering or disturbing the canopy that's over Harris Road with the site plan that we did. So we would be able to do 125 spaces on site at that point. I will say this. We've been in existence in Alpharetta for 16 going on 17 years. Not one time have we had more than 110 cars. So this would be a new problem. It would be a good problem, but it would be a new problem. So if we had 125 spaces on site, then the parking agreement, which we do have, and even if the building is sold, that doesn't become an issue. And I think what it does is, with the connection, if someone comes in off of Upper Hembry Road, that up top may be full, but then there's parking along the side, and then the bigger parking lot is down below, and then they can always come in and come up or through the building, through an elevator and things like that. Or if they come in on Harris Road, same thing, they could still come up, drop loved ones off and still go back down. So that alleviates that piece, but we're trying to be as respectful as possible with the trees and make sure we did everything that we could do in regards to that. And in looking at a lot of the other properties on there, we've certainly done our part with trying to save as many trees as possible.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you very much. Appreciate you wanting to be in Alpharetta.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak on this zoning issue, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Pardon? Oh, okay. Sorry. Mr. Woodman, Councilman Hypes has a question for you at this point. You could just say that into your mic.
I understand there's been discussions. Do you have any preliminary plans or thoughts about how merging the two parking lots, what that would ultimately be, or what the best proposal would be?
Well, I think the applicant, it was already discussed at the Planning Commission. the possibility of connecting the two parking lots on the eastern side of the building, and it just does not, the applicant went back to his engineer, and a connection through here just does not work, and they never showed any kind of connection in this area. This is where the topography is the most severe. With the slope coming off the back corner of the existing home on this property, it drops down really quickly. So this is just not a good location. So the connection and the additional parking would have to occur along this area right here. And that's where they showed it previously.
And if it is on that side, community development has recommendations and thoughts. What are your thoughts about the loss of those trees? Because I've not inspected those trees. The cost benefit of having the connected driveway versus those trees.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think that staff was a bit torn. You know, it would have been ideal for the applicant to have all the required parking on the site, and the applicant did, you know, there are a number of trees on this property, unusual for most sites. It's got so much tree coverage on it, and you know, with the canopy that it's created over Harris Road, that's why we were really trying to protect that. But I do think that there are, the installation of the connection here with the additional parking will allow for some trees to be maintained along Harris Road, so I don't think the entire canopy will be removed. And, you know, I think that it's always a good thing to have the required infrastructure on the property as opposed to off-site. So having that parking, I think, is a good thing.
Are your discussions with the applicant for a connecting driveway on the west side of the building far enough along that if it were a directive from council to subject to staff and applicant laying out the parameters for that driveway, that you have enough information now to do that?
Sure. That can be handled with the land disturbance permit. I have no concern about that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Woodman while he's up? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Mr. Woodman, we've seen in town, in our city, where other religious facilities have cut down hundreds of trees to put asphalt parking there, and the parking spaces stay empty most of the time, yet it creates a downstream nightmare for other neighbors, and when they've complained about it, nothing's gotten done because they said it didn't create a problem. Well, it did create a problem, and all the trees that were supposed to be planted were never planted. So I don't see a problem personally with commuter traffic on the busy holidays like Christmas and Easter and things like that when they commute from an adjacent lot, whether it be a medical office building or something 1,000 feet away or 1,100 feet away. What impact would it be, a serious impact, to take the trees down that absorb a lot of the water on that lot and take them away, and what kind of infrastructure is the church then going to have to put in for water retention?
Well, I'm definitely not the expert on water runoff, but what I would say is that it's definitely, we try always to limit the amount of impervious surface that's added to a property, especially with a property that does have some topographic issues with it. I don't know that this is going to, adding the connection here would be cause a major problem at this location, but it certainly can lead to additional water runoff by adding that impervious area there.
It's one thing if you add a lane to get traffic from the lower field to the other, but if you add parking on both sides, that's a different story, is it not?
Well, it's additional impervious area, yeah. So it's definitely going to have a greater impact.
And that adds to more costs for the church to...
Well, of course. I mean, if they have to build those additional parking spaces there and remove the trees, there are costs associated with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Woodman, as a follow-up to that, is there a maximum amount of impervious surface available on this lot?
There is. So this property is office institutional, and I believe the max impervious is 70%. I believe that it's 70%. It may be 60%. I'd have to check that real quickly.
Do y'all know if you did a calculation based on the original plan that they had submitted?
I don't know if they had provided it. They do provide the, well, they just show what our regulation is on the building coverage, which is 40%. But we did not do a calculation because it didn't even come close. There's so much green area shown on this property. This additional.
So on the original that they submitted with the parking lot there, it wasn't even close to the maximum?
It wasn't close to the maximum, no.
Okay. Well, that addresses my primary concern. That's what I was curious about. Any other questions for Mr. Woodman at this point? Thank you, sir. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to approve CU-20-03/V-20/10 Spirit of God Christian Church /1200 Upper Hembry Road, subject to the following conditions. I will make a motion to make a change to condition number 11. And my recommendation is to strike the first sentence and replace that with all required parking shall be provided on site. An applicant shall work with staff to connect the two parking areas on site, period. And then continuing with rear parking area shall be screened from Harris Road, including supplementing with evergreens if existing vegetation does not provide a screen as approved by DRB, and strike the last sentence. Applicant will work with staff to consider the location and configuration of a connection between the two parking lots if feasible. And then I also will make a motion to strike condition number 12, which deals with the off-site parking at the other facility, and no changes to the remaining conditions 13 through 16. And that is the end of my motion.
Have a motion by Councilwoman Richard, a second by Councilman Merkel. Is everyone clear on the changes?
It included a connecting driveway on the west side?
I didn't specify the side, but I did specify connecting the two parking locations.
And working with staff to
I'm
do
working
that.
with staff, yes, to make that happen.
Mr. Mayor, by substitute, I'd like to offer a motion to approve CU-20-03/V/20/10 Spirit of God Christian Church /1200 Upper Hembry Road, subject to the changes approved by the Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Hymes?
First of all, I'm excited that the applicant wants to keep their church in Alpharetta. I'm very excited about that. I understand the Villages acquired the, Villages acquired the former location. My primary concern about the current configuration is the cul-de-sac parking lot in the front and the potential for public safety hazard on Upper Hembry Road. If you're turning right into the front parking lot, coming out, you would most likely be turning left. Reliance on a shuttle service would only exacerbate, in my opinion, the potential safety risk involved. And if you're coming from the off-site location, that front parking lot is most likely where you would go, coupled with the foreseeable cars who will go in looking to park in the front parking lot, and when there's no spaces available, have to come out, have to go around to Harris Road. You actually create more traffic than you solve. I mean, I look at this configuration and think, about my own church over at Alpharetta Methodist, where you can come in the front and there's a driveway around the side on Cummings Street that takes you to the back parking lot, so you don't go in and have to come back out onto Highway 9, creating additional trips. To the mayor's point about impervious surfaces, this can be developed into something, Office OI, I think it is, and it could have a lot more asphalt than what it has now, potentially. And so I'm sensitive to your concerns, but I hear what the mayor might be saying between the lines of this is a less impactful use on this property than might otherwise happen. So I'd like to see the property move forward with Councilwoman Richards' motion with the connecting driveway. I think it will make a lot more sense for the parishioners. And so indirectly, I'm addressing the motion that's on the floor by addressing the motion that preceded it, just by way of discussion.
Councilman Binder?
I'll keep it real simple. First off, I always enjoy it when we're arguing about which version to pass, so that's always kind of a good news for the applicant. But quite simply, if the applicant's good with trying to make it a connection, we can make it work. I think that's what we should. I use that road quite a bit, and it is a pretty big cluster between everybody turning off left, right into the different buildings. Adding to it would be, even on a Sunday, would not help it. Right now, the Tesla car dealership's using the right entry lane from southbound Highway 9 to Upper Embry as a parking lot. I hope community development and public safety maybe can help resolve that issue. But I just don't want to add to Upper Embry. So I really appreciate you trying to help solve a problem before you create even more ones. So, and being a good neighbor before you're there. So either way, congratulations. Glad you're staying in Alpharetta. And looking forward to seeing that church being built.
Councilman Burnett?
The only, I think we all think versions of mostly the same thing here, and so that's always a rich man's problem. But today, there's one service, and so I go to church across the street. We shuttle in every week with 3 kids. I bet it's 500 or 600 feet, and it's not my favorite thing in the whole world, but I look forward to having the opportunity to get back on the shuttle because we meet in person all the time. But I said that to say this. There's nothing that says that he can't add a second service and park everything on site, or a third, or a fourth down the road, and I hope that for him. But I think the off-site parking is something that he solved for that really wasn't ever necessary. I think he alluded to it. I am in favor. I'm not crazy enough to vote against the church regardless of the motion that's out here tonight. But I do think that, if we can be good stewards of the environment at the same time, I think it bodes well. And I don't know that, I hope you never have to, I hope you have so many services, you park everybody right where they are today. But that was the point I wanted to make. I just didn't want to preclude him from saying that he may be able to just add a service when he grows to a certain perspective, and it would be cared for through his on-site church parking anyway, without removing and costing everybody a whole bunch of money. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
I would like to follow up on Councilmember Burnett's. I think we're all on the same page. We all want to see this permitted. I want to see it permitted, and I've seen it happen far too many times. When you add additional parking, you add to retention, you add to the cost, and it's expensive enough moving into a new facility for a congregation, and that cost is getting more, especially as congregations dwindle these days, unfortunately. But I don't want to add to your costs when it's not needed right now. And the transit, it's already in the application as it was written. It was applicant will work with staff to consider the location and configuration of a connection between the 2 parking lots if feasible. that leaves it up to some discretion on your part and on the staff's part, which is a much less costly thing. I think as a city, we're all called to be good conservators of the environment, and I know that the church is as well. And this will do both, as the second motion as presented. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? I'll just say that I'm glad both of them end up with the end result of the applicant getting one version of what they wanted. And what resonates with me in this vote is, which mistake will I regret the most, or will some council 100 years from now say, what the heck were they thinking? So with that being said, the motion is to approve as changed by the Planning Commission with the remote parking. Okay, so if you approve that motion, vote yes. Otherwise, vote no.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Stack the deck against them. So are we all clear on that? To approve CU-20-03/V-20-10 Spirit of God Church, 1200 Upper Hembry Road, as changed by the Planning Commission. Councilman Binder and Councilman. And the motion fails 5-2. So now we'll go to the original motion that was made, and that was by Councilwoman Richard to approve, but striking the remote parking and called for in condition 12 and changing condition 11 to allow all. That would be easier. No need to paraphrase.
Changes to condition number 11. All required parking shall be provided on-site, period. Applicant will work with staff to connect the two parking areas on-site, period. Rear parking areas shall be screened from Harris Road, including supplementing with evergreens if existing vegetation does not provide screen, as provided by DRB, period, and strike the last sentence.
So that is the motion before us right now. Are there any comments on this motion?
I take it all back. I was very excited about this.
My
Mayor Pro
vote,
Tem Mitchell.
thank you, sir. My vote will be yes for the church and the approval, but I really hate the fact that I have to vote for this motion because I think ultimately it's going to add to the cost of your moving in, and I hate that. I very much regret it because I welcome you all to Alpharetta, and I wish you much success. I hope you have to use tons of shuttles.
Any other comments? All right, we'll go ahead and call for a motion to approve CU-20-03/V-20-10 Spirit of God Church, 1200 Upper Hembry Road, with the changes to all parking must be on site, and work out with staff how that will be accomplished to join the two parking. So all those in favor of that motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Do I have to vote for this? I was like, yes.
More. We don't generally get applause up here. Thank you and congratulations. Good luck. Next item up on the agenda is item D, and that's PH-20-05, Unified Development Code Text Amendments, Alpharetta Downtown Code, murals, special event facility, temporary uses, and fences. Ms. Cook?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We actually had a workshop about this in June. And what we did at that time, we just moved forward with the changes to the UDC that we didn't have any research that was required. So mostly what we moved forward with to the Planning Commission was things that we didn't have disagreement on or requests for additional research. So some of these, you've seen all of these, but not all of them that we discussed are before you tonight. So I'll go through those changes quickly. The first one is a definition addition, and it's for a mural. Of course, we put the definition there, hand-painted, hand-tiled, or digitally printed restorative image on the exterior wall of a building or other permanent surface. If you remember before, we just had on a wall, so we did add that it could be a permanent surface. We also looked at the definition for privacy fence at the workshop. There were some requests to add in there that if it's more of a picket fence, that it wasn't considered a privacy fence. So we made changes to that definition of a privacy fence so that we wouldn't consider something like a four-board horse fence as well as a picket fence to be a privacy fence. We also, if you remember, we had the definition of a special event facility. We don't currently have a definition of a special event facility, so when people have come in, we've just had to find the closest definition within our code. So it makes sense to add that, and then, of course, add where that those can be located. So we just put a typical special event facility definition. We also have changes to section 2.2, which we put all of the detail in there, but basically if you just go to the last page that we included in 2.2, it shows you where we're recommending that a special event facility should be located in the light industrial category zoning designation, but a conditional use within the other commercial categories. And of course we put in AG because you could have a wedding event facility on AG farm property. So unless the special event is within LI, it requires the conditional use. We also looked at changes to temporary uses. We showed 2.3.2, which we're adding C, seasonal events associated with a not-for-profit for a period not to exceed 75 days. Authorization may not be granted more than 2 times per year per property. And so we added that under what the director may authorize. There's still a section, if you look at J, if there's something that we're not comfortable with, that staff's not comfortable with, we can still take that to the city council for review. So if it's not something that we can approve, they still have the option to go to city council. And then also within this section, it also has 2.3.6 fence and wall requirements. We just clarified that landscape strips and buffers, that the fence has to be 5 feet back from the landscape strips and buffers, so it doesn't take out any of the vegetation that's required. And then we also have D, the appearance. This states that a privacy fence or chain link fence along a public or private right-of-way shall only be permitted when the required landscape strip and associated landscape material is provided. And a privacy and chain link fence shall be prohibited in a front yard except that the Director of Community Development or designee may approve a privacy fence in the front yard on a collector or arterial streets. If you remember, we talked about that there may be some residences along Rucker Road that front the road, downtown where houses are built close to roads that are busier. So that's what we put in there, I think, to address that. And actually, Planning Commission helped us with that. We had it a little bit differently. They gave us some better language, I think. And then within the downtown code, this is simply putting where the special events could be located. And we also looked at some changes, if you recall, taking out uses that really didn't belong in residential uses. So within the downtown, we did have A theater could be a conditional use within the DTLW, downtown live work, which is really like the Thompson Street area is DTLW. So we took that out, didn't think that was something that was appropriate. And then we also took out manufacturing. We had light manufacturing in the DTLW as a conditional use. So really just kind of cleaning up some of the things that we saw. Drive-through window in the DTLW. So we're looking to remove that. And then, of course, we put the locations for the special event facility. And that's all the changes on this particular request for the UDC. If you have any questions. It also, I should state, this went to the Planning Commission, and they did recommend unanimously approval of the changes. If you have any questions.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Cook at this time? Thank you, Ms. Cook. Stephen, would you mind reading?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Articles 1, 2, and Appendix A, Alpharetta Downtown Code, the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to add definitions for mural, privacy fence, and special event facility. To add special event facilities are permitted in conditional use in certain zoning districts, to add temporary use for nonprofit seasonal events, to amend the fence and wall requirements, to amend the downtown land use categories, miscellaneous amendments to the downtown use table, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on these changes to the Unified Development Code text amendments, conditional use permit criteria. Nope, I've skipped down to the next one. The Unified Development Code text amendments for the Alpharetta Downtown Code, murals, special event facility, and temporary uses and fences, as read by City Attorney Stephen Jones. Now's your chance to come forward. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, offer a motion to approve PH-20-05 Unified Development Code text amendments downtown code murals, special event facility, temporary use, and fences, and the ordinance is read by Mr. Jones.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve PH-20-05 Unified Development Code text amendments, Alpharetta Downtown Code, murals, special event facility, and temporary uses and fences, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Ms. Cook, I believe you have the next item as well, and that's PH-20-11 Unified Development Code text amendments, conditional use permit criteria, and discount store definition.
Thank you, Mayor. This next one is a change to the definition of discount store. Different uses that we've seen. We already had a discount store definition within our code. So we're looking at adding another sentence to that says, a retail store that sells new or used goods or products at prices, that part is in there at the beginning. We're looking at adding this includes but is not limited to swap shops, flea markets, antique malls, donation centers, surplus stores, and thrift stores. The reason we need that clarification is because right now we have retail definition, and so we need to have a different definition for discount store and to add to that so that there's no question of which type of store it is. So that is the change that we have for the discount store. The other change that we're looking for council review and approval would be to subsection 4.2.3. Now, this is the conditional use criteria that we have. We're looking at adding a number 7 because we have a lot of different definitions that already have requirements for distance requirement for similar uses. So we're looking at adding number 7, ensuring that the conditional use is appropriately separated from similar uses and conflicting uses such as residences, government buildings, parks, churches, or schools. That's something that we're doing on a lot of the definitions. It's written into the definition, so we're recommending those are the two items that went to the Planning Commission. They did recommend approval after review unanimously. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Any questions from council on this item? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
I'm curious, Kathy, why is Antique Malls included in this as a discount store?
That was what we have found that mostly, and you're right, I mean, there's some antique stores that are not discount, they're pretty high end. But if that's something that you would look at us, like for us to remove or put within a retail definition, we could certainly do that.
We've had the Queen of Hearts in Alpharetta for over a decade. It would be considered an antique mall.
Yep.
It's hardly a discount store, and I would like to see us continue to support those things. Consignment stores provide our citizens a good place to resell their goods when they buy new furniture. It helps with the whole process, but I don't consider those. I get the flea market and those kind of things, but I don't get the antique mall.
And this doesn't affect any existing uses. It doesn't affect any existing uses that already exist.
But it would prevent new antique malls from going into. We're eliminating a big use for a lot of these big box stores that we'll see are going to become empty as retail continues to shift. And I see an antique mall as being one of those good uses for some of those vacant big big box stores.
Yeah, and it's in no way is looking to eliminate. It's all conditional use, just like with the special event facility. Because, like you said, I mean, there's certainly different business models for different types of antique stores, and we do have some wonderful ones in Alpharetta. But there may be some that have more deliveries that are close to residential. We need to make sure that those are happening in a manner that's not disruptive. So it doesn't eliminate anything. It's just setting it up as something that we look at as conditional use.
I'd still personally like to see that one item removed from it.
You strenuously object?
I do strenuously object. Thank you.
And in general, it is with our retail definition, it's new merchandise. But I mean, you're correct. There's very high-end antique retailers, but it was just something when we were categorizing. We have the new as the retail, general retail.
Any other questions from council? Councilman Merkel?
No, I hear where you're coming from, Donald, Councilman Mitchell. And I like the way Kathy's got this done because they can come back for conditional use. The concern I have is that somebody comes in and says, oh, no, we're not a flea market, we're a high-end antique store. Then the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the degree of high-end is up for discussion. So I think if you leave it in there, it doesn't mean we can't have them. They're just going to get scrutinized more when they come in, and they can't just walk in and do it by right, which would be my concern on that end. So, anyways.
Do we have any questions for Director Cook? All right, thank you. Mr. Jones, would you like to read this ordinance for us?
This is an ordinance to amend Articles 1, 2, and 4 of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend the definition of discount store, to add conditional use review criteria, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, is there anyone here that wanted to come speak on this item?
Not at this time, sir.
But if you are here and you would like to come forward, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-20-11 Unified Development Code text amendments, conditional use permit review criteria, and discount store. And the ordinance is read by Mr. Jones.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve PH-20-11 Unified Development Code text amendments, conditional use permit criteria, and discount store definition, as read by the city attorney, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass 6-1. So that will wrap up the public hearing items for this evening. We'll move on to the new business portion of tonight's agenda. First item up on new business portion of tonight's meeting is the consideration of an emergency ordinance requiring the use of masks in certain public places during said pandemic, allowing entities to opt out of said mask requirement and for other purposes. Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, as you said, would be an emergency mask ordinance. If it's the will of the council, I can read the ordinance, but our intent and the provisions included in here track Governor Kemp's most recent executive order with a few minor tweaks.
And I don't think we need to go through the whole document because it's extensive, but if you could please read through some of the,
Substantive provisions.
please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And so if you could look to section, it's page 6, section 1 begins the substance of the order, and it continues generally through page, the top of page 9. And what this ordinance would do, in section 1, it would declare a state of emergency based on COVID, which this council has previously done. Section 2 would institute the requirement that while in a public place, well, Section 2 defines, and 2.1 defines the terms used, and in 2.2 would impose a mask requirement when individuals are within the city limits of Alpharetta and also within a public place where social distancing cannot be maintained. And public place means any place other than a personal vehicle, residential property, polling place, or the premises or the curtilage thereof of an entity that has not consented to enforcement of this ordinance on that premise. So that would allow private entities, and entities is defined broadly to include essentially any non-personal, for-profit, not-for-profit, business or commercial undertaking, and the entity that leases or owns the property could opt out. And then also under 2.2, there are exceptions, which include all of the exceptions directed by the governor and a few others, namely eating. So an individual, even if they were in a public place where social distancing could not be maintained, they would be accepted from the mask requirement if they were eating or drinking, if they had difficulty donning or removing a mask without assistance, if they had a bona fide religious objection to wearing the mask, if they had a bona fide medical reason not to wear the mask, if they were under the age of 12, if they were on the premises of a polling place, if they would be prevented from performing work in the course of employment, or if they are complying with the direction of a law enforcement officer, or if they must remove their mask so that their identity can be verified, such as when purchasing alcohol, tobacco, or prescription drugs, or when engaging in a financial transaction. 2.3 does allow entities, and remember that's defined broadly, to opt out of enforcement of this ordinance on their premises and the curtilage thereof by posting a sign. That sign can also state that although they're opting out from enforcement, they still do encourage folks on their premises or the curtilage to wear a mask. Again, tracking the governor's order, section 2.4 includes 6 different enforcement provisions, namely one that it will not be enforced on residential property, it will not be enforced on the premises owned or leased by an entity that does not consent to enforcement and has posted the sign that we discussed previously, or against an entity or an owner of the entity. And tracking the governor, section 242 says that any person in violation of it will first be given a warning and informed about the health risk of not wearing a mask. If after being warned, section 243 gives the ability to impose a fine as authorized 244 is a service provision, and 245 says that even if you are in violation, that the city will make every effort to bring that suspected violator into voluntary compliance, and that includes asking them to leave the premises. And 246 says that in all locations where masks are not required, that they are encouraged to be worn. And also, if you will look, this is currently styled as an emergency ordinance, and as such, Section 7 of the ordinance has an automatic repealer within 30 days, or if the authorization under the governor's order or any other similar authorization is removed. With that, if the council has any specific questions or concerns, be willing to address those.
Have any questions for the city attorney on this item? Councilman Merkel.
Thank you. So if such an ordinance was put into place, what about participants in our youth programs in city buildings?
As currently written, this would apply on city property where social distancing cannot be maintained. So if they couldn't maintain social distancing, or if they didn't fall within one of the enumerated exceptions, they would have to don a mask.
So children in gymnastics and dance class and whatnot would all?
There's a carve out for children under 12.
Under 12. We have children over 12 and older that are in those programs as well. So my understanding is those programs would probably be discontinued, was the discussion from earlier. Okay, that answers that question.
And if
How about high school football?
currently there is not a carve out for those activities in here. However, under 2.2, if it's the will of the council, you could plug in an exception that would cover all of those recreational activities. Again, this ordinance was drafted with an eye towards staying as closely to the governor's authorization as possible and allowing.
Right. And I don't want you to feel like you have to defend what's in here, because I know you created what we asked you to create. There were council members that requested this ordinance to come before us. I just want to clarify. So my concern with how it's written, I've got several, but one of them is that it's so broad that anybody outside in the city of Alpharetta that's not on private property, in any park, in any function, anywhere, would apply to them if they're over 12. And I'm also concerned in the way that it's written, because it says if social distancing cannot be or may not be, if I remember the phrasing. So that's, to me, that's having sat in the mayor's seat for the last 6 months of people writing to address concerns of people too close on sidewalks and people too close in public areas and things like that. If it's maybe difficult, I mean, I can go into a Walmart at the right time of day and never come within 6 feet of anybody. Certainly don't have to worry about seeing a cashier. But other times, you know, I'm just concerned about something that's so subjective as can or may, because different residents with different concerns will think that something may be dangerous that other people may say, well, no, you can maintain social distancing. So, and I mentioned that to you. I just wanted to make sure and state it publicly on the record. Any other questions for the city attorney at this time? Councilman Binder.
Who sponsored this?
This was sent in an email to us, and the mayor directed us to put together a draft ordinance based on an outline that came from Councilman Burnett after the governor's executive order issued. So we tried to stay as close to that as possible, also staying true to the governor's authorization.
Okay. So we could carve out the concerns of the recreation with the kids. I think there's similar ones that he's had in executive orders for camps. You know, like I think the counselors wear masks, the kids don't. So we could do that today, and then any other concerns other council members of the mayor has, we can address that.
That's correct, Councilmember. Yeah, I think
Okay.
we have quite a few options here to carve things out.
Perfect.
Any other questions for the attorney? Councilman Burnett?
In plain English, can you speak to what the opt-in or opt-out is with respect to the business community that is in here today? Thank you.
Absolutely, Councilman. Every business is automatically opted in by posting a sign at the entrance, at your main entrance or an auxiliary entrance, where the public is going to come in or out, that you opt out, or that your business opts out, or that the owner of the building opts out. This ordinance would not be enforced on those premises or what the law calls the curtilage, essentially the outside area immediately before you enter the premises. So if you post that sign, and that was one of the stipulations of the governor's orders, that if that sign is posted, that this ordinance and similar ordinances cannot be enforced there. The governor gave authorized cities to allow businesses to opt out. So if a business did opt out, then the ordinance does not apply within the premises of the business or essentially the immediate area outside the point of ingress and egress.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Do you not see that as being, and I'm not targeting you by any means, I guess I personally just see that as being an enforcement nightmare for our police to figure out which businesses opted in, which businesses opted out, and as a business owner myself and having, dealt with the public for years, like I'm going to call a patron out who just bought some ice cream or whatever from me downtown here, or bought a meal from me. Oh, by the way, 911, you need to arrest this people or give them a ticket because they're not wearing masks. No business owner is going to legitimately do that. I mean, it's just based on this false premise that what we will get is we'll get the 911 system inundated with calls from people who don't have a mask on and other people who are concerned about it and maybe legitimately concerned about it, but it all boils down to personal freedom and liberty for me. Thank you.
Any questions from council? Councilman Binder.
On your point of, based on the executive order, it's an opt-out situation. Are we possible within the realm of that executive order to do an opt-in? So if they have a sign, I think the example was in Sandy Springs Council, they said it's similar to a no shoes, no service, no shoes, no shirt, no service. So no mask, no service. So is it able to do an opt-in policy? And that.
Yes, Councilman. The
Okay.
governor authorized either and or, so you could do an opt-in and an opt-out, or just an opt-in like you're referring to.
So so we can, instead of doing the opt-out, do the opt-in.
Correct.
And similar to, and maybe this is more a question for the chief, Sandy Springs, I said like, hey, we're not going to be going into stores looking to ticket people and enforce. It's similar to if somebody's not following by the rules in the private business, then they call and it'd be trespassing there. So what kind of engagement would you all be looking at as a police force for this? Something that you'd be pursuing or calling, or only if there's an issue by the businesses?
Our preference would definitely be not to pursue with something like this, I think for obvious reasons. So like right now, take Publix for instance, they have a mandate that you have to wear a mask when you come in there. We would come in if Publix had a patron come in and would not obey that mandate, and then if they called us and said, we do not want this citizen in our Publix anymore, we want to criminally trespass them, that's when we would come in and do that. In other words, we're not really enforcing the mask mandate as much as a private business has the right to choose to have someone criminally trespass from their property, and therefore we would come in and, you know, if we have a manager or owner that says, I do not want them on the property anymore, we would go through the criminal trespass property as far as the enforcement part of this regarding private businesses. Does that answer your question?
Makes sense. So even right now, if Kroger, private business calls and says, we don't want them because of the mask, it doesn't matter to you why?
Correct.
It's private?
A private business owner has a right to decide who comes in their business and who does not. So if somebody comes in for a completely unrelated issue and they're, you know, creating issues in the store for something else, they have a right to say, we do not want this person, you know, it has to be the owner or manager says, I do not want this person on my property anymore. We come and serve them what's called a CT, which is a form saying you're no longer allowed to be on this property for a year. If they show up within that year, then they're criminally trespassed and they're charged and arrested for it.
Well, I got you here. Some of the restaurants, I guess based on the governor's order, there's percentage of occupancy that they're allowed right now. If people call in and see it, because I know reports right around here in city center and downtown where I've seen pictures where it's
We get a few calls. We got a lot of calls in the beginning with this. If I can be frank, this will be a very difficult endeavor for us as far as enforcement goes beyond the businesses that I just mentioned. Get calls and, you know, we show up and say they don't have a mask on at a park, you know, we were practicing social distancing, whatever the case may be. It's he said, she said, and you're right, we get all those calls. I just rode by such and such an establishment and there were too many people on the patio. Well, we show up and half of them are gone, or if they are, you know, are they social distancing? And so it becomes a very difficult endeavor for us to try to enforce that aspect of this. Again, the business part really doesn't change what we're doing now, but the other part, the public spaces, parks, things like that, it would be difficult for us to have to try to enforce that, honestly.
the mask one. I definitely understand, especially in the parks and all that. And the private business makes sense. If they call, you go in. I wish as a city we could maybe look into what the governor said. You know, when he was having the issues with Atlanta, I just wish the cities would enforce what I put in the executive order.
Right.
And then, so I'd like to find ways that we can do that with some of the things that chronic people that have had occupancy issues. And so I definitely understand how it's a situation where it's hard enforcement, but we're in hard times. So would love to see how we can do that more on the occupancy issue, not necessarily the mask.
And honestly, I would have to get with Kathy. We'd have to determine, you know, what portion of this is code enforcement, what part of it's public safety as far as businesses. But we would work together like we always do to make sure that
we're all one team for sure.
We work together already with other things, and that wouldn't be a problem.
I think we just need to follow what the governor says. Of just wish we would enforce, the cities would enforce what we got going on now as executive orders.
I believe Councilman Burnett had a question. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Mr. Robeson, I was in Walmart today. I parked at the other end of the parking lot. I forgot my mask. I normally try to wear it when I go in Publix because they ask you to wear it. So I normally try and honor that. I forgot it and I asked the lady, do you have a mask? And she said, no, sir, you can go on in and shop. Now, they have a national policy they're asking everybody to wear masks, so they should be giving them out. But what about the people who are medically disadvantaged by masks, who the bacteria affects their oxygen level, and they have problems with respiratory issues, and masks are not favorable to them? Are we going to require that they have to have some medical certificate, or are you going to go on their word that the doctor told them not to wear a mask? How's that going to work?
I would refer to counsel on that one, legal counsel, because I have no idea.
It's a real issue.
I don't know if you have to prove that or have a document, or I don't know.
The governor's order made that explicit carve-out for medicals, for bona fide medical reasons. We, again, hewed as close to that order as possible, but you raise legitimate concern as with many, a few of the other carve-outs, how do you determine and how would public safety determine what is and what is not bona fide?
Yes.
And it becomes a factual issue that is subject to the determination of whoever is enforcing it on behalf of the city.
and an enforcement nightmare for you all to keep up with and maintain. So thank you.
Councilman Heights?
Mr. Jones, there's been some loose interpretation of the enforcement provisions of this ordinance, but if I read this correct and if I understand the intent correct, the enforcement is to issue a warning. Is that not correct?
The governor's order authorized a fine.
Okay, I'm talking about our ordinance.
So our
2.4.3, well, first of all, 2.4.2 is a warning, and then 2.4.3 is only if the person refuses and fails to comply, and basically they're filming their viral video, then they get a $50 fine if they just refuse an officer's directive to either A, move along, or B, put on a mask. Is that how this reads?
Yes, but with the added caveat that the local governments are strongly encouraged to, when enforcing, encourage any violator, A, to comply, B, to educate, and then as the very last option, to impose a $50 fine.
So you're ahead of me. So the enforcement isn't to call up and put people in handcuffs. The enforcement is you give somebody a warning, and under 2.4.5, you make every effort to bring the person into compliance, including offering them a mask if an officer or fire person or whomever happens to have a mask with them. Whoever the enforcement officer is, they could say, well, if you don't have one, here's a mask. That's written right into our ordinance, right?
And then there's also an education component, that's correct, and that's from the executive order. And the provision of masks arguably is not a, if we have it, it's a, part of enforcement is provision of a mask if they do not have one.
Okay. So, but the first default isn't to arrest somebody and issue a ticket.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to disabuse anybody who's listening in and texting me right now that that's not what this ordinance says. So,
Councilman Burnett?
Mr. Jones, Section 2.2.3 has a bona fide religious objection to wearing a mask. How do you determine that's subjectivity?
So that's another one of the exceptions that comes from the governor's order that it was left open-ended to interpretation and potentially to further definition by local governments. We cannot, and no local government in the state can impose a mask mandate that is more restrictive than what the governor has authorized. You do run the risk, if you were to explicitly define what is and what is not bona fide, of either being less restrictive, which is permissible, or more restrictive, which is not permissible. And that becomes one of those gray areas in crafting, and that all local governments which consider these will have trouble with.
So if Chief Robinson shows up to arrest me and the pro tem and I say that we're devout Southern Baptists, we don't wear masks, does that hold up? And who determines that?
So that would be a factual issue that would be raised with enforcement. I think the way that this would proceed is under the encouragement provisions that Councilman Hines put it out, and then if a fine was imposed as the last resort, as the governor directs, then you would contest that fine here at the city's court, and you would raise your bona fide religious objection, and then the judge would make a determination, and you could have a judicial determination of a factual issue as to what is and what is not bona fide, and that can continue to proceed as far as you're willing to take it, or as far as the prosecuting attorney is willing to take it, until there's a final unappealable decision.
For $50.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Richard?
Mr. Jones, I don't know if you covered this when you first started going through the ordinance, but did you discuss the threshold level that the governor has required in his executive order in order for the local option face mask to actually be enforced, adopted?
No, Councilwoman, I did address that, but it is addressed in recitals, the whereas provisions. The governor's order mandates that prior to a local government imposing a local face covering requirement, as it's called in the executive order, the county imposing it, or a local government existing within the county, i.e. a city existing within the county, that county must have reached the threshold limit to which you refer, and that is over the past 14 days, COVID cases equal or greater to 100 cases per 100,000, and currently Fulton County is over double that. So we've got a recital in here as well.
I'm sorry, we have what?
The county is over double the threshold.
And what about the city of Alpharetta?
The governor's order, the threshold is determined by data reported to the Georgia Department of Public Health, and it's based on a countywide level. It doesn't go to the granular city level or to the zip code level or anything like that. So we only have, as to this metric,
Okay.
counties that have data.
And we're trending at, did you say double the threshold?
About double over the past couple week or so.
And do we have data that gives us insight prior to the last week, the last month or so?
We do, but I don't have that data on hand. Council.
Now might be a good chance. One of the reasons that we had a late edition was I get daily updates on Fulton County Health Department statistics for Fulton County, including some municipal data. And so when I received an update today, I think it was probably about 3 or 4 o'clock, I had asked our assistant city administrator to add that to the packet. I believe you have those in front of you. If you don't here on the dais, you should. Just so we'll have, one of the challenges we faced is making sure everybody's looking at accurate data, and this is the most accurate data that I've had available. And sometimes I make the mistake of assuming that other people see the same data that I see. So as part of our packet, Mr. Drinkard, I don't know if you can blow that up anymore so people can actually see some of that. I'm sure it's difficult online or up in the monitor there. Maybe scroll it down a little so they can see what the headings of those, no, I meant just so you can see the headings of those chart. There you go. Those are the latest COVID-19 case counts and the rates by city as reported by the Fulton County Health Department today.
Sir, is that a down arrow that says 41.3 change?
Right, and the chart above that reflects these numbers. If, you know, I'm trying to be objective and just share the information. People can draw their own conclusions. But, I mean, that's the trend. As you can see, it peaked. The number of cases peaked in late July. The dark blue is, of course, hospitalized cases.
Is it the next slide where it had the 187? Is that the same number by which Mr. Jones was referencing a benchmark? For Alpharetta on the far right, 187.1. Is
I
that?
would assume so, but I don't have any supporting documentation of that.
That's the 187 per 100,000.
Right, I would assume that's the same calculation that he's referring to.
And that cumulative rate, if you'll look, there's a footnote that says that that's based on, that's a per 100,000 person calculation. So that would be apples to apples, but it's not compiled by the same Georgia Department of Public Health that is our trigger by the governor's order.
So Georgia Department of Health is doing the roll-up on a county level, and then Fulton County what I'm seeing here is breaking it out by city, correct?
That's correct, but I have no information on it as to, the correlation between their data sets.
Okay. I know from the updates that Fulton County does every 2 days, Alpharetta has been, in the last month, hovering between 180 and over 200 cases per 100,000 as far as the rate of infection is concerned. So we get that from Fulton County on a regular basis. Thank you.
Right. And as you see, the last 14 days that information is ended August 14th, and that's the challenge with some of these things. If you go back to the chart above, anything past August 14th, where it drops down to cases being almost nil, is not included in that calculation because that's more than 14 days. So I think clearly if you look at the 41% drop 2 weeks ago and look at the trend on the chart above, there's nothing that would indicate that it hasn't continued on that same trend. And I believe there was another one. Is that all that we had? Okay, yeah, and we've already shown that piece. So as compared to the rest of Fulton County where some of those rates are calculated. So do with it what you wish, but I just wanted to make sure we had the latest as far as data that had been provided to the municipalities at this point. Councilman Binder.
Hasn't over the past week, I checked the past 3 Fridays, for instance, it's gone from below 200 back up to 200, below 200 on those case counts. So they dip up and down.
James, if you want to go back to the.
But
I know, but you see the dark, you see how those plummet? And I'm just trying to explain the data that they provide. This is all they've provided me.
Yep.
But I've been watching these things every day for the last 6 months. You see there's a definite trend that they don't seem to do a lot of test results on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And so the numbers fluctuate up and down. And the 14-day average smooths all of that out. But yeah, if you're checking them on a daily basis, Monday morning, you don't generally see a lot of new cases and not a lot of new deaths or hospitalizations because they're not tallying a lot of numbers on Saturdays and Sundays. And then they make up for it the other 5 business days, and then it drops off. So if you're looking on a daily basis, you're absolutely going to see cases from Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday sometimes that may not be dropped until Monday or Tuesday.
Most definitely. And I'm just saying between week over week, the cases per capita been hovering around 200 for the last month, which is twice as much as the national average.
Like I said, I don't have the dates, and I don't know what you're referring to, and I don't dispute that. I'm just saying that if you're looking at this graph, this goes back, I can't even see, it's too small to make out that date, but like that's August 16th, is that, I believe, the latest date shown there. August 19th, maybe. So yes, I mean, the cases have shot up. We clearly peaked, and that's a lot of cases, and nobody's disputing that Georgia hasn't had a lot of cases. Just wanted to share the data as we're talking. She was asking about trend levels and those numbers. Yes, we had a lot of cases. They've been dropping for a month now, and they're showing in the 14-day trends that are still 13 days behind us right now.
Mr. Jones, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this question, and maybe some of our council members do. What is the Fulton County Schools? I know they have a target for the infection rate before they are going to begin Phase 2. Does anyone know what that rate is?
Councilmember Richard, it's 100 per 100,000.
For phase,
Councilman Minor?
I'm getting better, huh? Phase 2, it needs, I think it needs to drop for 2 weeks in a row. And then, but to get to where everybody gets to go back to school, it needs to be below 100. Hers was for phase 2. So 2 weeks in a row of dropping. But, yeah, it needs to go, we need to cut it in half of where we currently are to get kids back into school.
Any other questions from council at this time? Thank you all. I appreciate it. At this time, do we have any public comment cards?
Yes, sir. I have 2 public comment cards. I believe they will be coming up together. Sarah and Praveen, 405 Ridge Court, Alpharetta.
Mr. Mayor, as a point of process, I have a question. I know
Sure.
there's probably people that have emailed us and said they'll be watching by Zoom. Is there any way, are they watching and you're getting comments right now?
No, sir. There are people watching, but I'm not getting comments.
You're not getting,
Correct.
they have the ability to put comments?
We did receive, I know, one today via email. Aaron, were there others? No. Okay. So I'm aware of one that we received today via email. That's at your spots on the dais, and it is being made part of the record.
Thank you.
Is there any way, because I know over the past few weeks, we've received numerous emails. Can those be added into the public record?
As long as we have them, sir. So if there's ones that council members have received that.
Well, I mean, I know we've got all of them because they're public information.
Yeah, no, I mean.
I hope we have all of them.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Aaron and I do not have all of those.
No,
We can get them, we
but I
can make
mean,
them part of it.
I trust that Aaron can work with perhaps Amber because I do want people to be heard and know that we did read them, we did consider all of them. And so we may not have had a chance to respond to all of them. But I think it's only fair that those people who didn't feel it was safe to come to City Hall weren't able to do it online live, that we put their comments into the public record on this item. Thank you.
And just a point of clarification for me, are we actually Zooming or are we?
So we do not Zoom the meetings.
Okay, I
But
didn't
we
think
do
so.
have it live
Live stream.
streaming via our YouTube channel and via the meeting portal.
Okay, thank you.
I think we ran into some technical difficulties in trying to coordinate.
I remember that, but I heard Councilmember Binder say Zoom, and I thought, did I miss the fact that we did
I
Zoom?
just assume we're Zooming for everything now for digital video. It's like Kleenex, it's a tissue.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name, but if you would like to come forward at this time, please do. I think it's okay as long as you're a family unit.
We are. Okay. So my name is Sarah Janjarala. This is my husband, Praveen. I'm actually an RN, and I am kind of speaking on behalf of several of my RN, nurse practitioner, and physician assistant friends. We're all actually slightly concerned about this mask mandate, whatever you want. I think it's called the mask ordinance. We're actually concerned that it's overreaching, basically. I have some health concerns. This may take, I know I have 3 minutes, this may take a little longer than 3 minutes, but.
You should have come forward separately. You could have had 6.
Well, go sit down, go sit down.
This is an important matter, and I'll try to give you some leniency, but anything I give to you, I have to give to others as well. So.
Okay, I will try not to overtalk, but I just want to point out, so as I'm sitting here as a nurse and I'm watching everyone with their masks, okay? So this is an issue of public safety here, as everyone thinks, and I'm seeing everyone fidgeting and taking it off and touching and doing all this, okay? So I just want to tell you, as a nurse, when I have a patient with droplet precautions, which is what COVID-19 would be, the process that I do as a nurse versus what we're asking the public to do out, and it's just very drastically different, and I have concerns about that there's no way to implement something that you do in a healthcare setting with people safely or effectively. And I even have concerns that there could be some dangers with contamination and just other things that I'll talk about. So when I go into a patient's room, I go in, in my scrubs, and I put a gown on that's not been in the patient room before. I put my gloves on, and then I put a mask on with usually a face shield if it's droplet precautions, okay? I go in and do the thing to the patient, maybe 5 minutes, 7 minutes, depending on what I have to do with them. And then I have to carefully come out, and I have to very carefully take it off, put it in the appropriate bin, and take the gloves off without touching the front and putting it in the appropriate bin. Then I have to take my gown off and carefully roll it up and put it in the appropriate thing. And so I am a mother. I have 80-year-old grandparents. I'm a nurse. I love people. And I know that people are concerned about COVID, and I understand these concerns. So I'm sensitive to people's fears. But I worry that people are thinking that with just, this is going to protect you from a disease, which you can see my glasses fogging right now. I don't know if you can see it. See it? So if I had symptomatic COVID-19, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes, you know what I mean? And it's the same with the surgical mask as well. It's the same thing. The viral particles are, this is not, what's the word? Does not provide high enough filtration to filter out the virus particles, okay? The only thing which I haven't seen a single person in this room wearing is this, the N95. And the problem with wearing this all the time is because, first of all, it has to be fit to your face, really fit to your face snugly. And the problem with wearing it all the time, there's even a warning on it. Misuse may result in sickness or death.
I'll give you one more minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so the problem with wearing this is, just like you were, I think you, Councilman, were concerned about the children exercising. 2 boys dropped dead in China while wearing masks. Okay, I see people outside all the time on their bikes running, and they're breathing, and they're hyperventilating and all this stuff. And if you wear this, which is the only thing that will actually prevent or protect you, it can cause something called respiratory acidosis. Respiratory acidosis is basically when you are rebreathing too much carbon dioxide. And what that can cause is, in New Jersey, we had a woman hit her car, like she passed out in her car and hit a pole because she was wearing this for too long. Because in respiratory acidosis, it's like when someone's about to pass out, you ask them to breathe into a bag, right? I'm not explaining this well. Y'all looking at the face eyes. Okay, this can cause you basically to get dizzy with prolonged use. This can cause you, even though this is the only kind that's going to protect you. The other thing is with the cloth masks, I'm gonna go really fast here. When you wear this for a long time, as everybody is, my grocery baggers are always complaining to me, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Because they're getting wet, and because of that moisture, they're not only breathing in other viruses and bacteria, which is bad for them, but they're also, with the wetness, you know that a wet cloth over your face limits your breathing. So there's just multiple things. We don't live in a sterile field. Like, it's not possible to provide a sterile environment for this. So I'm just concerned. I did a bad job, but I'm concerned.
No, that's fine. I understand. But there's a lot of people that may want to speak. So
Sure. I'm so sorry, yeah.
That's okay. Don't apologize. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
If you will, please give your name and address for the public record.
Thank you. My name is Praveen, husband of Sarah Janjwala, and I'm not going to belabor the points that you've already gone through. But as a concerned resident, one thing that I do want to mention about, I know we looked at the number of cases. I do a lot of statistics study as well at work, from a work standpoint. And the number of increase in cases, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an increase in fatality rate. And so we may have a lot of positive cases. That's because the number of testing is going up. And so the recovery rate is a lot more faster than the fatality rate. I was looking at the CDC website, and it was 97% is the recovery rate. And so because of that, they have dialed down the makeshift hospitals because they were empty and we're not even using them. So I guess our concern is that to enforce a mask mandate, and I apologize, I'm not probably appropriately using the terminology that we're using here, but it actually perpetuates fear. And we need to allay the fear. The moment you walk in, we walked in and we look at people who are healthy, wearing a mask, and there's a fear that just comes in. There's a psychological effect to that as well. And the last thing, and I agree with the council member about the enforcing piece of it, that's a nightmare for our law enforcement. We as a resident, we want our law enforcement to be focusing on the well-being of the citizens and just keeping the criminal activity at bay. And so that's where we would like our law enforcement to be channeling their energy and resources. So with that, I just wanted to come here and mention our concern about enforcing prolonged use of masks. And just I speak on behalf of my wife and also some of the other concerned residents that they have mentioned the same concern. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any other public comment cards?
I do, sir. Julie Stevenson, 1364 Dalesford Drive, Alpharetta, Georgia.
Hi, I'm Julie Stevenson. I'd like to go over some of these statistics that we were talking about before. 100 for 100,000. That is 0.1% infection rate. So that's what we're talking here. This whole population, this is what we're doing everything for, 0.1%. That's not even including deaths. That's less than that. It's gone down in the last 14 days that you saw, it's gone down 41.3% in the last 14 days. This is significant. This is a significant downtrend from, like we said, 0.1%. I'm going to go over some side effects of mask, prolonged side effects: fatigue, fainting, passing out, pneumonia, pleurisy of lungs, Legionnaires' disease, extreme headaches, asthma attacks, sinus affections. And by the way, these asthma attacks are occurring on grocery trips. Increase in ticks, if you have ticks, by 50% while you're wearing the mask. Dr. Russell Blaylock, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, very famous neurosurgeon, says no scientific evidence that mask works. Headaches are caused by hypoxia, hypercapnia, which is low oxygen, high carbon dioxide. Hypoxia causes immunity impairment, the very, very thing that we want to go up. It's making it go down. It's causing an increased risk of infection. People who are immunocompromised or who have cancer, especially at risk, hypoxia causes inflammation, which can promote cancer growth. Dentist, they're calling it mask mouth. Decaying teeth that have never had cavities, that's what they're seeing now. Receding gum lines where they've not had inflammation in the mouth before. If left untreated, this is causing periodontal disease, which leads to strokes and increased heart attacks. Criminal activity. So when you wear a mask, mask will effectively hide criminals and rapists, increasing rapes, violence, and thefts. Kidnapping and the sex trafficking aspect. With the requirement of mask, recognizing a suspected victim will be virtually impossible. Let's take Elizabeth Smart. The reason she was caught was because she was in a disguise. People noticed that, and so they called the cops. But if it's in right now, nobody would notice because everybody's wearing a mask. Sex trafficking is a really hot topic right now. Please save the children. I have come here as a representative. I'm a business owner. I come here as a representative for the athletes and the coaches. Although I am private, I'm still going to stand up for the city because I know that y'all talked about athletes. Well, it's under 12. Gymnasts, we have adult gymnastics. They're over 12. We even have some that are like 50. Coaches, if they were to wear a mask, this is dangerous. When they're spotting and something goes wrong, you have to act very quick and very fast. There's been lots of time, and you have to reach over your head, so you're trying to save, you're running, you're thinking very fast, and you're reaching up so we can save the gymnast from broken legs, even death if they are to hit their neck. And when you're moving, your mask can go over your eyes. This is extremely dangerous for the coaches. It's extremely dangerous for the athletes when they're exercising.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to wrap it up, okay?
Okay, so that's all I was going to say. Please think of our coaches and our athletes that are over 12. Thank you. I respect you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cobb, were there any more public comment cards?
Yes, sir. Gabriel Burchett, 2441 Loxford Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia.
Gerald Burchett, 2441 Loxford Lane. I'm not going to talk about masks because everybody has their own opinion about the mask. But as this ordinance has been read, it is a convoluted mess. If you pass this, you're going to live to regret it. You're going to have to deal with all the consequences of it. So I urge you, do not pass it as written.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any other public comment cards?
No, sir.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward at this time, now's your opportunity to speak on this item. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I think we've fallen in this time and time again where there's no sponsor. It is a rough ordinance. Took it that I thought we'd have something where we had a common denominator. It seemed like everybody was okay with the public buildings with that. I'll offer to table this for 2 days to come up with an ordinance and rewrite it.
Table it for 2 days. Were you requesting an emergency meeting?
Not at this time. But I am offering it the table for at least 2 days. So when it's ready to be heard, maybe 3, maybe next time we meet.
Okay, we have a motion to table for 2 days.
Can I ask a question about?
You may.
Because we don't have a meeting next week.
He said for 2 days.
No, I know, but
okay.
Tabling it for 2 days with the understanding if there's work to be done, it would likely be heard the next council meeting, and I just wanted to make sure.
Just as a point of order and clarification, if it's tabled for 2 days, it's only on the table for 2 days. So we either meet Wednesday or the motion expires.
It would be an emergency motion under the charter.
Well, that's what I was asking. The motion didn't include a call for an emergency meeting on Wednesday, so I just want to make sure. Because just making a motion to table it for 2 days is we either hold an emergency meeting by the expiration of Wednesday.
I can table it indefinitely. Table it indefinitely then.
We have a motion to table it indefinitely.
Second.
We have a motion Motion to table cannot have discussion, so I'll go ahead and call for the vote to table this item indefinitely. And the motion to table indefinitely fails 5-2.
Mr. Mayor, I would offer a subsequent motion. A subsequent motion will be to deny it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny the ordinance
It's a new one.
as written. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Binder.
I can honestly say I'm disappointed but not surprised how this is going. I got in good faith. I thought we were going to come together with an ordinance where there was a common understanding by the majority, and was told that working on something that we'd get there to what everybody agreed on. I will say, I hear you, and I respect your opinion. Everybody's got opinions, and we just got to go with the best information we have. The Nurses Association says wear masks. The hospital says wear masks. CDC says, Georgia, you're the highest growing, wear masks, 10 people or less. I'm for that. I think us being double the national average is not a good sign. I think me being need to cut the current number by 50% so my kids can go to school is do anything I can to help improve that situation. And I am listening to the experts. We can't even pass the low bar that our inept Governor Kemp has set for us. So I'm just disappointed, but I'll go with what the majority says. But we were told last week that we could find something that we could agree on, and there were at least some. But this is a big straw man ordinance where it was set up. I don't know, and it was just shame on me that I should have sponsored it and worked with legal to get what was done, I thought. But this is a straw man ordinance that was set up and then shot away. So,
Councilman Hypes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All of us have received many emails, and I think my reading of the emails reflected a great deal of conviction and passion on both sides of the issue, and I can only speak for myself, but I would ballpark those emails roughly 50% one direction, 50% the other. Something of a rarity for me on my time on council to see how divided the city is in terms of, and how articulate and passionate people are. So I don't question anybody's opinions, motives, conclusions on this, but because so many people took the time to write very thoughtful emails to us, I wanted to use this time to explain where I'm coming from on my vote. I hear the liberty argument, and I respect that. I respect all the arguments. Right now, there are 34 states, entire states, not counties, municipalities, that have a mask mandate in effect. And some of those are deeply, deeply conservative southern states, and to take the politics out of it, it runs the gamut in terms of the states, more states than not having mandates. Now, our state has chosen not to, and I respect that, but we have an option as a city to go our own direction. Seatbelts were first introduced into a car in the 1950s. They were first required to be in a car in 1968. They were first required to be worn in 1984 in New York. I've never driven a car and not worn a seatbelt, and I started driving in 1975, actually a little before that. But so I'm not comfortable without a seatbelt. I'm okay with the government telling me I got to wear a seatbelt. Took my dad some getting used to because he grew up not wearing a seatbelt. My grandpa, he never wore a seatbelt. You know, that just wasn't going to happen. You know, we're told to put child seats in a car. We're told that back when I was younger, drinking and driving wasn't a good thing, but it wasn't what it is now. But the government says you can't drink and drive, and we got used to the fact that it's not for us, it's for the other people on the road. You know, and one of my favorite analogies is I'm old enough to remember when you sat in row 22, you were in the non-smoking section, but the guy blowing smoke on you behind you in row 23, he was in the smoking section on an airplane at 30,000 feet. Yeah, there are some things that the government decides to do either permanently or temporarily that is for the common good. And for me, I don't see fear when I see other people wearing a mask. I see compassion. I don't wear a mask for me. I wear a mask for you. God forbid that I am asymptomatic carrying COVID and I get a friend or loved one sick. I don't wear a mask for me. I wear a mask for other people. My mom is 90 years old, and she has been restricted to quarters at her senior living home since the end of March. And she has no real idea when she's ever going to come out of her senior living home, her and all her neighbors there. But we do get a chance to see her looking through a window. There are lots of other seniors living out there days on this planet who are locked inside, but if we can get control of this thing, if we can sacrifice some, we sacrifice for them and they sacrificed for us. Schools are a big thing. We can't get our economy going. Number one thing to get the economy going is get parents who have kids back in school. Sacrifice can get us there. When I hear a number like it's only 1%, it's 5,156 deaths. That's what 1% is in Georgia since March. And that's 5,156 coffins. That's 5,156 funerals. That's 5,156 families mourning in Georgia, and tomorrow's another day. So I want the folks who have taken the time to write me to know that I have no problem with short-term focused sacrifice by our city and hopefully our surrounding cities to get a grasp on this thing before the flu season gets here. We've got enough to deal with when the flu season gets here this fall. And I'm going to conclude with this. For a long time, people have been talking to God about things. And if you read the Bible, the very first question man ever asked God was, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And God answered that question right on the spot and in all the pages that follow. And so for all the folks who threaten to vote me out of office based on whichever way I vote, and we all got those emails, if you're listening, I am my brother's keeper. And I want you all to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I believe it was Councilman Burnett next, and Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell after that.
Councilman Hypes, thank you for your thoughtful comments. You know, when we first started discussing it, the truth is that we should put a sign on the door here, right outside, and I don't need an ordinance to do that, to say, hey, you should be courteous to your neighbors, and masks do save lives, because I do believe that that's the truth. But this state and this country has got to quit declaring a state of emergency over something that is 6 months old, because it's not a hurricane, it's not an earthquake, it's become a way of life. And for me to to sit here and look at the state of emergency ordinance from the state to roll it out every 2 weeks. It's the most disingenuous thing ever because it's not going away. It may be trending down, but it's not over. But I will never be somebody from a public business owner that tells you what you can or what you can't do. I'll never tell you who you can marry. I'll never tell you where you can worship. Those are fundamental things for me as an American. And I think that the world of them, because the intentions that they, are after are intentions that I am after. I just don't want to have to tell you to do it. I think we should be wildly aggressive with the PR campaign, and we have done a really good job, and probably plenty of people around here think that we have some sort of mask mandate anyway, because if you walk to Costco or Publix or Kroger or Target or wherever, they ask you to put one on, so people just assume that you have to. I haven't been anywhere in days where you didn't have to wear one. So I think the message is being delivered, and the business community is the tail that wags the political dog, and it always will be. And I hope that you guys continue. Just because I won't mandate this doesn't mean that you shouldn't. I coach soccer on Friday nights for my youngest son, James. He's 5. And there wasn't a single mask out there outside the fence, and all those people want to go talk to little Bobby and little Susie. It's irresponsible, but it's their right to make a bad decision. But it is absolutely something that we should get after from a PR perspective, because that should not happen. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councilmember Binder and Councilmember Richards for their viewpoints, and they're valid. I always think it's good when we have a community, as Councilmember Heights pointed out, that's divided on the issue as strongly as this one's divided, that our council represents that and is reflective of that division. But that being said, the media has mentioned this. I read something earlier today when I was trying to do a little research on it. Over 200 million times since March, they've mentioned this pandemic, more than the Spanish flu, more than the bubonic flu, more than all the SARS together, more than all the coronaviruses, and there have been whatever you call them, the pre-coronaviruses that led up to this one long before, and nobody was asked to wear a mask. I swear, I had it in November. I did not have a mask on. There's something called herd immunity, and until you get past that herd immunity, and there's many in the medical community who feel this way, this virus is not going away, and as you continue to wear a mask and continue to prolong it, that's the reason that schools are not filled. England today, they will start their school. They started school today, and they're going back because they're like, the dangers of not sending our kids to school are far greater than the risk of this corona or COVID-19. The media has continued to villainize anyone who didn't wear a mask. Even our city, and I'm not getting into this thing, but we had a thing without faces blocked out of a gathering on the town green, and I thought that was regretful, because it's not a matter of the governor having the police department educate people. People are educated beyond belief on this issue. It's not a matter of education. It's a matter of people making a choice whether they wear a mask or whether they not, and believing that they will protect someone, or believing that the science is totally wrong or misguided or whatever. But I agree with Councilmember Burnett. It's not my place as government. Those who govern least govern best. And it's not my place to set up here as someone who's not in the medical field and no education in that area whatsoever to make a decision that you should wear a mask and you're a villain if you don't wear a mask. And I'm just not willing to do that. And I think it's a personal choice, and I think people care about other people, whether you do or whether you don't. I think most people are loving, caring people and want to help in any way they can, but to put them under a guise that you're helping or you're not because you wear a mask is just not something I'm willing to do. Thank you.
Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. I think The comments tonight by our public speakers were very helpful and insightful, and I appreciate you all being here and sitting through this meeting and giving us your firsthand experience and opinions as to the value of wearing masks. And I also, like all of us have said, thank all of our constituents who have been motivated to write in and share with us their opinions, whether pro or con. As I look at this ordinance and decision that we have to make this evening, I look at the fact that we've been in a global pandemic for 5 months, and our state has reached a very sad milestone over the weekend, over 5,000 deaths. As Councilmember Hype said, I mean, everyone is one too many. And this virus is a pandemic. It is not a seasonal flu, and it has a very high asymptomatic rate. And public health experts all over the world, including our White House Task Force Committee, the CDC, WHO, they are all recommending strongly to wear face coverings to mitigate the spread. And I take those experts and I appreciate their insight, and I don't second guess the recommendations that they are making for the health of our country and our world. And when we sit here and we know that our schools closed in the springtime because of this pandemic, and that in Fulton County they were not able to open when they were supposed to open in August because the rate of spread is what it is today, double what the goal needs to be, I'm sorry, I don't see this as a personal choice. I don't see this as a civil liberties issue. I see this as a shared personal sacrifice that we all should be doing so that we can get our children back in school, so that we can keep our economy going, so that we don't have to deal with another forced shutdown. And I'm grateful that we are looking at statistics that are showing the cases are going down. But we shouldn't take our feet off the pedal here. This is not going to go away. And so when we come out on the other side of this pandemic, I want to know, and I feel very strongly that I can look at myself as a leader of this city and know that I tried to do everything I possibly could to mitigate this spread and to get our kids back in school and to keep our economy growing. Thank you.
Councilman Merkel? All right. Well, I know this is a very difficult decision, and every person on this dais has been through the ringer for 6 months trying to divine the best way to help our residents, our employees, and the people who live around us and generally would come here to enjoy their lives and work, and the business owners. And it's been a tough slog. It's been a tough for all of us because everybody in this community has suffered. We're suffering. We're all under tremendous stress. Nothing is easy anymore. I use the analogy of trying to run in water, you know, because nothing's natural. We have to adapt, and everything's changed, and emotions run high, and I respect everybody on this dais for doing exactly what they think is best for this community. There's some concerns I have in general with this ordinance, and I appreciate the comments earlier that it's a shame we couldn't come to an agreement. I didn't propose the verbiage of this ordinance. When it was proposed, I talked to my fellow council members to try to find a consensus, and you're right, there were a couple of points that we could have agreed on, but there were also some people that were dead set on a mask mandate everywhere. And I didn't find, and I'm assuming no one else on this council did, enough common ground that was going to bring something we could all support. I'm sorry that didn't happen, but once again, some people feel like this is absolutely necessary on this dais, and I respect that opinion. I just don't share it. And I respect a lot of what's been said up here. I, too, have a mother that's been quarantined. I drive up there every couple of weeks and spend an hour and a half outside her window. And I promise you nobody on this dais wants to see their mom any more than I do. There's also nobody that wants to protect their mom any more than I do. But there's no blueprint for what's right and wrong. And 6 months ago, we were told we had to shut down this nation to flatten the curve. Nobody said we had to slow down the rate of increase of a disease or things like that. And that doesn't mean that the professionals and the, experts are wrong now. But if we had known 6 months ago where we'd be right now, I think we would have made some different decisions. And when I look, I swear I pour through the numbers. I have people telling me, oh, well, you got to see the data for the masks. And I don't dispute that there may be some impact of the masks. But the person that spoke tonight is not the only person who has pointed out that wearing all of the tests and the data I've looked at was generally international studies in a controlled environment of N95 masks in an operating room setting, not an American flag mask that you bought at Walmart for $2 and left in your car, every time you throw it on the floorboard when you get back in and stuff. So there's really, going back to the discussion of seatbelts. Seatbelts were not mandated until decades of data had been poured through, researched, and assimilated into information that showed the impact. And we pride ourselves on this council of using data to drive our decisions, and I love that the governor and the school system has set targets. But when I look at the data, those were subjective points at which they felt the data was acceptable to not require masks or something like that. I'm sorry, when I look at it, I'm actually, and I know that I've had numerous friends, I've got people who are on chemotherapy that have reached out over the past week who have been trapped in their homes. They're high risk. Most of them are over 70. And they're just terrified, and that they think they're going to have to live this way for the rest of their lives. And they think that masks are the solution. And if I thought masks were a silver bullet, I wouldn't be voting the way I'm voting. I don't see any data to support that. And I think, quite frankly, because based on some of the discussions I've had over the past week, people think that this is really going to be the game changer. And there's no data to support that. I saw an article yesterday. Hawaii imposed face masks on their state back when their cases were extremely low because they didn't allow people to fly into Hawaii for a period of time. Their cases have exploded now, and they started exploding after they made it mandatory in public spaces. And I know it's hard to accept the fact that so many people believe it's going to save us. It may make a difference, but my challenge is if we know that the people most at risk all of a sudden believe that they're safe because other people are wearing masks that may not be effective at all, that's my fear. Because had we known 6 months ago that the population that had comorbidities, diabetes, over 70, and things like that, they've composed the overwhelming majority of hospitalizations and deaths. Most of these cases in the past month and a half are people under 30. That's why if you look at the data, deaths have plummeted. And I know cases are bad. They have long-running impacts, but so do concussions and everything. You know, I mean, I just don't see that as a nation we've been able to, and it's a shame, to come to an agreement on what the facts are and make fact-based decisions. And that's what I have to rely on, because I don't know. So I look at the data, and I look at what I can know. And what I know is that this may have some impact if we were to pass it, but the small group of people who are high risk aren't going to be much safer if they go out in public with poorly worn PPE. What I do know, though, is that we're also seeing tremendous stress on young people who have almost no chance of dying from this disease. I've looked at the numbers in the state of Georgia. I mean, we've got children that aren't in school who are at no risk of losing their lives. Now, I know that they want to get back to school, and I want them to get there too. But that's not why the kids aren't in school. They're not at risk. And you know, all these cases that have spiked in the past 2 months, they were primarily people under 30 years old who finally realized, look, it's not hurting us. And I wish we could get them to do a better job of protecting themselves and others. But this isn't a silver bullet, and there's no data to support that we're going to have a major impact. That huge curve you saw over the last 2 months started when we had no mask ordinance. It skyrocketed when other cities had mask ordinances, and it's plummeted without us having a mask ordinance. Unfortunately, to believe that we can control this by a municipal law, we're kidding ourselves. And so I think there's things we can do, and there's no reason we can't take up something in the future to hopefully bring some consensus on it. But what's saving this community and what's bringing down the cases are good people like yourselves making smart decisions. For a while there were a lot of bad decisions made. But we are doing the right thing. Everywhere I've gone the past 2 weeks, I look, and there's a sign saying, wear a mask. I wear masks. I don't, when I'm sitting up here, I'm socially distanced, and I got to talk for 4 hours. So it becomes cumbersome. But everybody on this dais tries to do the best they can to protect others. So I'll leave it at that. I know everybody up here is passionate about it. We'll continue to figure it out. These are difficult issues. And one way or the other, we are going to get through this all together. So that being said, the motion was to deny, I'll read it, make sure I get the title right, to deny consideration of an emergency ordinance requiring the use of masks in certain public places during said pandemic, allowing entities to opt out of said mask requirement for other purposes. All those in favor of approving the motion to deny, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And the motion does pass 4-3. Next item up on tonight's agenda is consideration of an ordinance to add certain provisions governing enforcement of violations of Chapter 20 of the City Code, to provide regulations governing record retention and compliance of filings of fire, life safety, and related records. This is the first reading. Director Robinson, you have the floor.
Mayor, back in August of last year, 2019, you as a council passed Ordinance 783. This ordinance pertains to the maintenance and reporting of records for fire and safety life systems in Chapter 20 of the Code of the City of Alpharetta. What we're wanting to do tonight is to amend this ordinance by adding a section that we can will allow us the ability to enforce this ordinance. And I've asked our fire marshal, Philip Seabolt, who, by the way, is doing a phenomenal job in the position, to come up and share with you a little bit about that before we read the ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll try to be very brief. Every commercial occupancy in the city, including multifamily residential, is required to have a fire and life safety inspection every year. About 1/3 of those fail. Requires a re-inspection. And 1/3 of that third will fail again. And we find ourselves constantly going back out. We have no way to go after them in the pocketbook, so to speak. We still, amending this ordinance, we still are going to give a 7, 14, or 30-day window to get those violations corrected. So we're not going to show up first time fail and write a citation. That's not our goal. Our goal is to make sure the building is safe and will continue to be safe. I do have some examples real quick. 17 building apartment complex, their sprinkler system was non-compliant. It took us 8 re-inspections, 10 site visits, multiple emails and phone calls, and 9 months to get that building to become compliant. And this is where we have people sleeping at night. Another one was another apartment complex. It took us 8 months, 6 site visits, 22 emails, and multiple phone calls before we could gain compliance. It's just a small handful of places. Like I said, it's 1/3 of that third. So it's not a lot, but it gives us a little bite, so to speak, to go with our bark. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Seabold at this time?
Brief.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Thank you. This is mainly for businesses already in existence?
Correct.
Okay, so it does not apply to new businesses and
As in new construction or as in new business?
new construction?
No, sir. This is just our annual fire and life safety inspections.
Okay. And the overarching reason is to get it done quicker and,
It is to reduce man hours for us to be more productive and be efficient. If we can cut down on the times we have to go back and the times we have to email and the times we have to, make those phone calls, we can be out doing more inspections versus following up, and following up.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Binder?
Smart that y'all are going after, 3%. 3% of the ones that are causing the majority of issues and reissues. So I think it's great. The other one that we saw an issue similar to it was for emergency vehicle visits on certain businesses. I think mostly a lot of the senior homes. Do we have something coming up on the docket for that pretty soon?
I know we talked about that in the last year or two, yes, but I don't know that I'm not aware of anything coming up. We did have conversations about it at Council Retreat and a couple other times, but we never really, I think we maybe even talked about it this past January, but then of course COVID came along. But that's certainly something worth discussing and having back on the table again. We have discussed it before, and I think there are some merits to looking at it for sure.
I think it happened on the past couple of retreats, and if it would be good if we can get what y'all would recommend for it and maybe do nothing, but just so we can close the book on that.
We have the data, and we can certainly provide that or update the data again if need be.
Give the data, but give a recommendation on policy.
Okay.
But want to keep doing the same thing because want to make sure you all have an efficient use of your time.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Will do.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, gentlemen. I was just checking to see if I had to read the ordinance. Thank you for the check. Mr. Jones, do you mind reading the ordinance, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to delete, modify, and add certain provisions governing enforcement violations of Chapter 20 of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to provide regulations governing record retention and compliance filings of fire, life safety, and related records, and third-party software related to the same, to repeal conflicting ordinances, to provide for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that wants to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that council approve the ordinance for enforcement of violations under Chapter 20 as read by Attorney Jones.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Binder. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve consideration of an ordinance to add certain provisions governing enforcement of violations of Chapter 20 of the City Code to provide regulations governing record retention and compliance filings of fire, life safety, and related records. Please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Next item up on the agenda is Tradewinds Parkway Extension Traffic Impact Study. Mr. Sisevich, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 49 is the Tradewinds Impact Study, the ripple effect we've been calling it lately. You may recall GDOT is moving forward with the Georgia 400 Express Lane project, and Tradewinds is a new exit on that interchange. And what you see before you tonight is a irregular shaped rectangle, we'll call it, study area. Windward Parkway to the north, West Side Parkway to the south, North Point Parkway to the east, and West Side Parkway to the south, or to the west, excuse me. Traffic signals are shown. Those are all existing or proposed. I circled 2 proposed on North Point Parkway as part of the, what I call the Windward Mill development, but it's the development that's under construction right now. Also along Windward Parkway, it's hard to tell, but we do have our improvements from the Triple Lefts project as well as the Windward T-Splosh project between West Side Parkway and North Point Parkway displayed in there. And Public Works went out for proposals, and we received a total of 6 proposals, with Moffitt and Nickel providing the most comprehensive proposal for the dollars submitted. And they have a 6-month schedule approximately. It's 3 months for preliminary work. 2 months after that will be the final report after Public Works and the city goes through their initial study, their initial recommendations, and some additional fine tuning. So we're looking at 6 months to be ready, if not sooner, provide recommendations to Mayor and Council for potential improvements along that corridor. And we've let everybody know that all improvements are on the table. Nothing's off the table. Come up with a design that's going to move the traffic the best with these improvements in here. And lastly, we are going to use historical data, not only from traffic signals that get traffic counts, but also current traffic studies we did pre-COVID-19 and apply a factor for 20 years out to give us the best information possible.
Have any questions from council? Councilman Hypes.
Director Surveyor.
Pete, there you go.
I noticed on the staff report that this is neither in the capital or operating budget. This is outside the budget?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and out of which bucket will this come from?
Unallocated capital.
I may have missed that in the report. If I did, I apologize. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Thanks, Pete. What's the estimated time frame now for the construction of this road, at best guess?
Are you referring to the Tradewinds?
Correct.
So GDOT just issued a new report at their last board meeting, and construction starting in 2022 and completing in 2026.
Ooh.
So where Tradewind falls in that, I do not know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Neither does GDOT.
Any other questions? Councilman Binder.
Just follow up on Councilmember Hype's question. For T-Splosh, this section, we didn't preclude what bridge we would do work on, or is it, did we say North Point?
So
Can we use T-Splosh funds? Let me just ask you for that.
This wasn't listed as a T-Splosh project, and neither was the studies, I believe, listed as one of the items for T-Splosh. Our T-Splosh project from Webb Morris to North Point Parkway, nothing has been formally designed yet. So any improvements that we want to put towards there, we can put towards there. Nothing has been formally designed.
That was a T-Splosh project?
That's a T-Splosh project,
okay.
Sir. Yes.
So just to clarify, does that mean we can use T-Splosh money to do the study to allow us to do the design?
I don't know. I'll rely on Tom on this one maybe, but put him on the spot.
Director Harris?
But I
like
believe
half of it.
we don't have it for studies in the tiering of projects.
Right, but I mean, we've done studies for the other major projects that were
We've done
T-SPOS.
design, we have not done actual just.
We never did any traffic counts on any of those?
On the Webb Bridge corridor, we had, the Webb Bridge corridor is a little unique. It was previously done through a capital initiative.
Okay.
Mayor, the transportation study that we did with the 5 other cities in North Fulton was funded from T-SPOS. You'll see it as, I think our contribution, our part was $22,000.
Okay.
So that study was funded with T-SPOS dollars.
All right. Well, we can sort that out, but it's a great question. We'll look into it. Any other questions from council? Just one of methodology. So can you help me understand how you're doing traffic counts? Because in this environment, we probably couldn't take reliable information to use.
So GDOT has traffic counts along the major corridors through our traffic signals. And those were the numbers that were embedded with the RFP process that the Georgia 400 Express Lane teams were shortlisted from. So they have that information. We also have traffic counts from private development as well as from our intersection studies that we have done previously, like previous to COVID, previous to 2016, and compare that data that we have. So we have the numbers pre-COVID, and we will just apply a 20-year design period. So we'll add a factor for every year going forward, with the base study being what GDOT has as their base study for their traffic counts on Old Mill Parkway, their traffic counts they got on Windward Parkway associated with the Georgia 400 Express Lanes project.
Thank you. I figured it was something like that. I just wanted to make sure we weren't spending money to do traffic counts.
No, we are not spending money to do traffic counts.
Thank you. Any other questions from council at this time? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
We don't have an ordinance for this one. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards at this time?
We do not, sir.
But if anybody would like to come forward and speak on this matter, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the council to please award the project for Tradewinds Parkway Traffic Study, Impact Study to Moffitt and Nickel in an amount not to exceed $75,480, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second, I believe, by Councilman Binder. Any discussion?
Pete, once again, thank you for your work on this and all the projects that you're trying to juggle right now in a very difficult environment. So it's exciting to see not only this move forward, but other projects move forward in record time around our city, such as the Windward and the tunnel and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, Mayor Pro Tem, what was the dollar amount on that?
Not to exceed $75,480.
Thank you. So the motion is to approve Tradewinds Parkway Extension Traffic Impact Study in amount not to exceed $75,480. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate you finally getting this one together. It was a last-minute ad compared to the ones we've been working on T-SPOS for the last 6 years. As I mentioned earlier, that we will not be taking up the It's My Town Alpharetta mobile app this evening. So next item up is confirmation of council's approval from executive session, joint representation and cost-sharing agreement. Mr. Regas, if you don't mind.
Mayor, Council, and this is just to confirm your vote from the executive session that you were allowing the mayor to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the other cities in the county. I forget the exact purpose of it, but it was to join to consider a lawsuit against Fulton County for the distribution of CARES Act funding.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? Councilman Binder.
Mr. Regas, in your opinion, just for all the years that you've served on the county and Alpharetta, what can we do to improve the relationships? We got this, and I think it makes sense to kind of shoot a flare over the bow, but I guess my concern is we got T-Splosh 2 coming up. Got an article coming my way from somebody on council saying that the county's looking at taking 30 cents off a T-Splosh 2 that, we may or may not approve of. I'm just very concerned that the relationship has degraded, and don't want to do it through lawsuits and seeing that, that never helps, but going along the way. But what can we do?
That's a tough question, Councilman. In my years there, the county has to look at the cities as people and entities they serve, because they do. And they serve us with libraries, health department, tax assessors. But every once in a while, it doesn't seem to go that way. And I don't know, I think the mayors and the commission have developed a pretty good rapport over the years to get T-Splosh 1 through and to have the regular meetings, and this comes up, and I just think that in this case the county thought the money was just all for them and didn't think much about the people they serve.
I don't even know about that, because the T-Splosh 1, where other cities were getting the full penny, the county went in and got 30% of that off to put for MARTA. And I haven't seen from them about working with us for the MARTA stations that we've been working with. We got to figure out a way to get a partnership going, and it takes both ways. But this is out of nowhere. This is been multiple issues since I've been here, the 2 terms.
And as trying to help understand or to answer your question, because that was a question about how can we fix this relationship. I think your sentiments are shared by not only this mayor, but 13 other mayors in the county. And I think that's why we're having this collaborative conversation, to try to get back on the track where we're all working together again, because many of the municipalities in Fulton County also feel like the relationship isn't where it needs to be, and we've got to have an effort to do that. So I agree, and I think the other cities agree, and that's.
I guess my hope is, I agree with what you're doing. It's just got to be multifaceted of go to the legal side, and we gotta.
I will share that I got an invitation to a Zoom meeting on Friday that Fulton County has asked the mayors to attend.
Actual Zoom meeting?
I believe it's an actual Zoom meeting. I'll have to check my calendar.
Thank you, sir.
But I do believe that's the case. So, thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Well, I mean, this was questions now, and we'll go to the public, and then, so if you have any questions for Bob, now's the opportunity to ask questions.
If we didn't go along with the lawsuit, is that going to disproportionately affect our payout, or is the county still the ultimate determining factor as to who they're giving money into what percentage rate? Because I feel like we stand to lose more than some of the other cities with some of the projects and the things that we would like to see out there. I would like to treat them as a partner and not a vendor.
I mean, as I recall, the IGA, we can settle any disagreements we have with the county. Any city can, in the IGA, settle and leave the other cities. So I'm not sure if that answers your question directly.
Any other questions from council at this time? Thank you, Mr. Regas. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak up, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the IGA, confirmation of council approval from executive session. The recommendations for mayor and council to confirm approval of the joint representation and cost sharing agreement.
I have a motion by Councilman Merkel and a second by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion?
I would
Mayor
like.
Pro Tem Mitchell.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought you had looked at me.
It's getting late.
Along the lines with what Jason was saying, I think he has very valid arguments, and I do want to preface what I'm saying. I know Bob Ellis is running for re-election. Bob's been incredibly responsive to us as a city, but the systemic problem lies with the county. We've got sewage in our city that hasn't worked for 10 years. Alpha Park, 2 homes, I've spoken with 2 people who have been flooded by the sewage of the new construction up behind the QT. So it presses all the sewage. They were flooded, and the county they called the county, they sent a fan, or they sent 2 fans, and said they'd have to tear down the walls. And he said, "Who's going to rebuild my walls?" And the county said, "I don't know. That'll be done later, I guess." One of the fans didn't even work. It's been 10 years, and they have not fixed our sewer. They've not added new sewage lines to our city in areas that need it, where the sewer pipes are in disrepair. I heard from another citizen who wants to buy in an existing neighborhood. They called the county, and they can't even add on a room because they can't add a daggum septic tank. And the county's dictating to us, in a period of growth, we can't add a room onto an existing house here in Alpharetta, and yet we're supposed to take the county at its word? I'm sorry. It's like, if you want to talk about underserved communities, any city that's in North Fulton is underserved by the county, in my opinion. And that hasn't changed in the last 10 years. So thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
I don't know how you follow that or what it had to do with the IGA, but I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have concern because I know that it's been a futile effort up here to try to deal with the People's Republic for a long time. And I said that to say that, guys, we have an investment that we're looking at with serious dollars with respect to MARTA at North Point, which most of us had the opportunity to try to do. And if that T-SPLOS works out, I can't help but think that that's going to be a huge benefactor. And the other piece of that is, maybe there's an opportunity to get a better deal. And to Donald, the pro tem's point, nothing ever changes, but I still remain hopeful that there are good days ahead, because like I said, I'd like to treat them as my partner. And I'm tired of getting what's left over. And to tie on to what he said, if you go to West Alpharetta, some of those sewer lines are 100 years old. It's time for them to do something. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Hypes?
I just want to applaud the mayors for working together. I think when you're dealing with a large pot of money, you have to have a strategy, and you deal from strength. And it would, if I was on the county side of this issue, divide and conquer is exactly what I would try to do, and to diminish the stronger voices amongst the group. And so I just want to applaud all the mayors for the surrounding cities for having an organized, pointed plan to deal with this. It is a large sum of money, and it can also set the table for future discussions about future issues, knowing that we're willing to bargain collectively with the city. So I commend you, Mr. Mayor, and the other mayors for what they're doing.
Any other comments from council? Well, I'll just note I completely agree with you, Councilman Burnett. I think this is an effort to be partners with Fulton County. Unfortunately, we just haven't felt, we being the collective cities, haven't felt like we're being treated like partners over the last 6 months. And this is an effort, as Councilman Hypes related to, is to show that we're unified and we're all in this together, and we need to be treated like we're all in this together. So I support the motion. That being said, the motion was to approve the confirmation of council's approval from executive session, joint representation and cost sharing agreement. All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Next up is the redevelopment plans for Union Hill Park workshop, so there will be no vote taken this evening. Director Rogers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to plug in here real quick. Won't take me but a second. Okay, so I was so excited when I looked at the agenda tonight and realized that I was the main attraction for tonight. So really excited.
Save the best for last.
At the retreat back in January, one of the things that we were asked to look at, our department, was the possibility of the redevelopment or the repurposing, if you will, of the master plan that we have for Union Hill. The current master plan has a $4.3 million price tag on the master plan. So with the activity that we have at Union Hill now, with the pop-up skate park and the trailhead becoming a real reality that's getting ready to happen, the council had asked me to bring this back up. So I'm bringing it back up to y'all tonight, or I hope I am.
Keep going.
Just have to pantomime it.
Yeah, okay, well, I would need his, probably gonna need James's assistance on that. We can go to the old-fashioned method.
Just hold on. Almost there.
Okay, good.
Thank you, James.
So this is, and I know it's not a very, I know it looks small on the screen, probably up there too, but this is the current master plan that was adopted in 2017 by Mayor and Council as a conceptual master plan. But the $4.3 million price tag was the thing I think they got everybody's attention, and that's why we're having the repurposing. I have some slides of the current situation at Union Hill, but I don't know if I need to run through those, or if we just need to open up discussion about Union Hill. I know I have a few recommendations that I would like for council to look at. I don't know what the pleasure of the council is. I've got about 10 slides.
I'll check. Does anybody feel like we need to go back into the deep dive of where we are and the details of this plan, or have you had a chance to review it?
Yep. Well, you know, as we're moving in, looking at this plan, I will tell you that we've had a very good turnout at our pop-up skate park. It's been well received. I was out there this afternoon because I was going to snap some pictures in case y'all wanted to see them. And there were probably 15 to 18 young individuals out there enjoying the skate park exactly like you're supposed to enjoy a skate park. So I was out there about 3:30 this afternoon. So, when I got there was about 3 skating. By the time I left, about 20 minutes later, there were probably about 15. So I think it's more toward, obviously, when the heat drops off a little bit. And then we also have a group of folks that go out there 2 or 3 times, families that go out there 2 or 3 times a week and play badminton in the parking lot. In fact, they've taken tape and they actually put 2 badminton courts on the parking lot, and they just play over in the far corner. So the Union Hill's starting to get used. And with one of the pictures I do want to show you is this is the shot from Union Hill of the greenway that's coming. Pete and his group are building the greenway. Those are the helical piers that they're putting in. So, you know, they're making progress. So the greenway is coming to Union Hill in short time, we hope. So as we're looking to repurpose this, one of the things that, as the director, I would suggest that we look at leaving the two buildings that are, or the two structures, the two major structures there, one being the pop-up skate park, leave it for the time being, as well as the covered arena. And of course, I know then you're going to ask me, well, what do you want to do with the covered arena? So don't really know what we want to do with the covered arena. I just know that a covered arena that size is a very big asset for a city the size of Alpharetta. So I would say we could either make it a special event facility where we could have farmers markets, we could have concerts, we could have outdoor movies, outdoor movies and those kind of things. Or what did I say was funny? And you know, that could. And the other thing that I want us to look at is the possibility of turning that into a covered athletic practice facility. We have a shortage of particularly rectangle fields and rectangle places to practice. So the idea of turfing that completely underneath the cover, and then letting different sports use it depending on whatever is happening at the time. One of the things that and I've had this conversation with a couple of folks. I think they were Recreation Commission members, though, that one of the things that we're finding out about the Innovation Academy, because we're redoing the Innovation Academy, is folks are starting to realize that there are, kind of some more fields out there. So we're hearing from the lacrosse people, we're hearing from the rugby people, and we're hearing from the cricket people, all who want space for their sport. So I didn't change. I wasn't changing subject matter. I was just letting you know that that's coming, and that could be something that we could look at. And then, of course, even this plan, the parking lot stays the same. And I would say, obviously, we want to leave the parking lot. But other than that, that would be the big takeaways that I would have, is that would greatly reduce that amount of developing the park. But we'd have to look at what are those amenities in this master plan, excuse me, are we willing to give up, and what would we want to keep in that area?
Councilman Burnett.
Mr. Director Rogers, would you take back to the Rec Commission, would you ask them what ideas they can come up with for that covered space? Because
absolutely,
they sure are a good group.
Yeah, we have a workshop, a commission workshop later this week. And that's one of the items we were talking about is Union Hill. So I'll make sure that, but I'll pass that along. But
Councilman Binder.
One of the good things, we saw that with the Windward Soccer Complex and this at the same time, it was community-led. So if we're looking at adjusting the plan, make sure it's community-led. So I would even kind of work with the Rec Commission and say, okay, how do we rebid this out to the community of what you want?
Sure.
Because there's probably going to be a lot more people saying we'd like to see a skate park. And then I guess when you had the covered area, that I think that was supposed to go away. But if you want to keep it, make the case. But yeah, I'd start community-led and bring it to Rec Commission, have them work with it, and then that way we can make sure we have a good organic plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the commission realizes that it's got to be a process, but we have to come back to this group because this group approved this plan. So if this group goes back to the commission and says, things have changed, the game has changed a little bit, we need to look at it and see if there's a higher and better use for this space under the current circumstances. Then we will certainly go back to the community and get those folks involved and get the energy that's out there surrounding this.
And the same thing we did with at Broadwell on using one of the services to a toned down conceptual plan. Right. And then let's figure out what our budget is, as opposed to where we had this kind of dictated to us. The good news was, what was Windward Soccer Complex? How much was that on this consultant? It was.
I think it was about $2 million.
And you spent what?
About $700,000.
There we go. So I think you're doing the right thing by taking it back through the ringer. Just make sure it's community led again.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from council? Rogers, there was one thing I was going to ask you, only because I got an invitation, I believe later this week. I'm going to be talking to the property owners that are along McGinnis Ferry adjacent to this property. there was, I forget, 30-something acres, I believe, or something along that way. And I believe there's a proposed project for that land now. And so I didn't know whether they had reached out to you or if you've heard anything about that. So
No.
we'll need to be cognizant of that as we
They have
start.
not reached out to me, but, no, they have not.
Okay.
I don't know if, no.
That's fine. While we were talking about this, because that may impact it, because if you see this plan, some of the property they own has an easement for access through that cul-de-sac there. So depending on what they're doing, that may impact what we need to do with our plan as well. And we were aware of that with the current master plan that was done, but it did, at that time, it didn't look like anything was going to be changing.
I thought, I don't know if y'all have it on your screen or not.
I do.
You can see that this indicates that we had to provide that access. It doesn't, I don't think it necessarily means that we have to do it the way it's drawn here. We can flatten lines and those kind of things and give them access, but I think we have to give them access to that property.
That's my understanding as well, but I just wanted to incorporate that as we're talking about this part.
And just so you know, that piece of property, if you're looking at it, the one that runs along McGinnis Ferry, the creek runs right there, and it drops off pretty quickly once you leave the parking lot. It's not flat like it looks obviously now, so it's a pretty tough piece of property to try to do anything across.
Right. And since it's a workshop, and from my opinion, I agree with Councilman Binder that I have no problem with going back and reevaluating now because a lot's changed since then. But it does need to be resident-led, and it also needs to take into consideration whatever's going to be done on that property, if anything.
And I appreciate the comment that how successful Windward was, but Windward was a community-led project, from the get-go. So I think we obviously learned a lot there and want to make sure that we build on those successes.
Good. Any other comments? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
So that will wrap up the workshop portion of tonight's meeting. If there's anyone here from the public, I don't believe I see anyone that's not an employee of the city of Alpharetta here, but if anyone's out there, now's your chance. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Any reports? Well, I have one report. I got to go to a ribbon cutting today, and I have free cookie cards from Crumble Cookies on Old Milton Parkway, and they're really good. So I'm passing that out to our council. I promised him I would hand them to you. It's really a great young couple that moved here from Colorado to open up in March. And so it's been a challenging environment.
Aaron, do we have to report any kind of cookie donation?
They're not that expensive. But they're a great young couple, and it's exciting to see them apparently doing very well so far, considering. But I'm just, anything we can do to support small businesses that are trying to invest in Alpharetta right now. Just want to make everybody aware.
And it was a local construction company that actually did the build-out for them.
I did not know that. If there's no other reports from council, Ms. Regas?
Just a couple updates, Mayor and Council. The community development over the last couple of weeks they've taken in about $150,000 in fees of one nature or another. 17 new residential permits have been received, so construction is still good in Alpharetta. And Pete's crews are doing a great job, as always. They completed, I think it was 55 work orders last week, and that's just a lot of work that goes unsung. But they're out there every day doing what they have to do to make the city look really, really good, and unclogging storm drains and all that stuff that they do. So we really appreciate all that. Mayor, that's it.
Thanks, sir. Councilman Minor.
Mr. Regis, we got an email from you July 24th on the budget, and you said in 3 to 4 weeks we could be expecting presenting budget forecasts and other cost-saving ideas. When can we expect that for council presentation?
Yeah, I know that Tom is working with the directors now. I believe they've had one round of meetings, and that they're fixing to get back together. So, do y'all want, I guess I could ask, how do we want that to happen, you know? I guess a couple of weeks ago, I sent Tom's projections as to what he thought the shortfall might be in fiscal year 21 and then 22. But we almost have to work through that to see if that's, are y'all on the same page with that, you know? So as Tom and the directors work.
Do we need a
we're the same
workshop, perhaps?
I'm not the finance liaison of that. I would think if you said 3 to 4 weeks, as soon as possible, or to get the right information, as transparent as possible.
Sure.
So we're all on the same page. I just think it's important we all get this data at the same time in this, so there's no confusion, and just treat it like the stock market. Everybody gets it at the same time, and you can analyze it how you want. So just maybe a game plan on it, and want to make sure it's right, so not rushing you, but just, I know you said 3 to 4 weeks, and we've hit that. It's been a month today, so.
Anything else?
Okay.
Thanks, sir. So that'll wrap up reports. And now, sadly, I still have to call for a motion for adjournment into executive session.
Motion to adjourn into executive session.
Second. Have a motion by Councilman Burnett, second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion? All those
I don't want to go.
Nor do I. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn into executive session, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. Karen's still deciding. And she voted yes anyway. So it does pass unanimously. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to adjourn into executive session.